That's what I'm talking about. It's Sunday. It's time for the Sunday show. I don't know what everybody else is doing, but some of us here, we're busy raising a whole bunch of money for recovering from religion.
Woo-hoo.
And how do you not like when that happens? Hello, everybody. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Paulogia. How are you, Paul?
I am doing all right. We're all tired and depressed. That's just our default state. But I'm excited to be on a show with you, Matt. Excited to hear what Thea have to say. I'm excited about it all.
We're all excited. By the way, you still have 20 days to go and donate to Recover from Religion. If you're looking at your screen and going, wait, who the heck is that guy and what happened to Matt? Well, not only did we raise like $95,000 and climbing, but I made a deal. During last year's Recovering from Religion fundraiser, I said if we got over like $60,000, I would get a tattoo of a drawing done by Seth Andrews, and I did that. The back of my calf now has the cat drawing and Seth's autograph on it, permanently inked into my skin, or at least inked in until, I don't know, we come up with a better technology for removing him, and I lose my mind because I love that. Why would I want to take it off? This year, I said, for some reason, every time I look around, all these people are just wearing mustaches. Like, oh, the mustache on its own is making a comeback. And I freaking hate it. Like, I hate. So when I was in the Navy, I had to wear, the only facial hair I was allowed to have was a mustache. You couldn't have a beard because it would block gas masks from sealing and stuff like that. And you had to get permission to have a mustache as well. And so I wore it. And there's old pictures of me with a mustache and everything else. And I freaking hate it. And by the way, my ex-wife hates it, has always hated it. I sent her a picture this morning just to like poke her. And she's like, yeah, you look 10 years older than you do when you get the goatee. Arden hates it. And last night when I cut it off, she typed in chat, oh my God, I didn't realize how much it was going to hate it. So all that does is prove that I was right to hate this particular look. And it doesn't matter because for the next month, I will not have a beard and I will just let my mustache grow. And you guys will just have to suck it up with the uglier version of Matt here on the show, no matter what you say. And then once the month is over, then we're regrowing because this is some bullshit right here.
Might be able to cheat the last couple of days.
It would just take me off the air. But what it did do was it raised a ton of money for Recovering from Religion. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to claim that the first $75,000, which is what was required to get to this shave thing, was all because I said I would shave. And then the other $20,000 that they raised was from everybody else who participated.
An apology.
Yeah. It's like, but at least, like Austin Archer sold his integrity and stash or mustache integrity for a lot less, and he has to shave off half of his mustache.
Wow, that's even worse.
I suggested that as a bit of a joke, figuring he wouldn't jump on it, and he absolutely did. Now I think that he should have to shave off like the right half so that he's just running around like you could do you must pay the rent, but I can't pay the rent. You must pay the rent. You could do that type of thing, and
a lot of TikToks. Indeed,
you can do it all. All right, enough of that crap. This is a call-in show where people call in, hopefully able to defend their belief in gods or the supernatural, telling us what they believe, why they believe it, and more importantly, why they think other people should believe as well. Paul and I are former believers with different backgrounds and different takes on a number of it. And at the end of the day, I mean, we're looking, can anybody actually present evidence for this? I suspect after decades of doing this, that that's incredibly unlikely to happen. But there there are specific questions that we've been shooting for. Wow, the air conditioner is not completely blowing on that mic, so I'm going to block it a little bit. I want to know, where did I go wrong? Because I was a former fundamentalist Christian, Southern Baptist, occasionally going to Pentecostal churches. And I cared more about whether something was true, and in particular, demonstrably true. Like, because if it's not demonstrably true, it's useless. If there's no way to tell whether or not it's true, then its truth is indistinguishable from its falseness. And I cared more about what was true. Was that a mistake? I care more about good standards of evidence, sound epistemology, so that I believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. Was that a mistake? I believe that evidence for a particular claim are the data and facts that are not merely consistent with a proposed explanation for something, but point exclusively or nearly exclusively to that particular proposal. And that every claim should be accepted only after that demonstration of reasonable warrant, meaning evidence for or demonstration of logical necessity or practical necessity, has been presented. And so when somebody said, hey, there is some being, some thinking agent out there that created all of reality, I want to know if it's true. I want to know how we can tell it's true. I want to know what convinced other people it's true and what they think should convince me that it's true. And so that's what we're looking for. If you're a theist and you think you can do that, call us. And if you're a theist that thinks, I can't do that, nobody can do that, and you still feel justified in your belief, call us. And if you think that one of the precepts that I just ran through about, maybe you think it's more important to care whether or not something's comforting than whether it's true. Maybe you think that that claims don't require evidence, that you can just go ahead and accept them if they feel good or whatever. Please justify any of that. But if you have some esoteric bong rip theology about how we're all God or what, don't bother calling there. If you have a bizarre claim that isn't shared by, millions as a predominant proposition about reality, if you have something that is, it's just for you, unless you can demonstrate that it's true and we've all missed something, if there's no testability or falsifiability, no way for us to know that it's true, I don't know how it can be of use to us. But by all means, if you think we've overlooked something, today's the day.
Amen.
It's also Mother's Day. And I have not yet called my mom. I'm going to call my mom after the show. I meant to do it a little bit earlier, but I'm a terrible son and have frequently been called a mother myself. So that's my every Mother's Day joke. All right. Paul, do you have announcements or things to address before we start digging in on these callers?
I have no announcements other than my hope that all the people on social media who have told me that I just don't understand Christianity, and if I knew a slightly different version of it, that seems to be a common theme this week. If I just had a slightly different theology, I'd still be there. But without elaborating, please call in and elaborate, because I would happily go back. I will quit the line and, start my own Christian show. I'd be excited to do that if I could be shown that it's true. So please do that.
Awesome. All right, we've got calls if you're ready.
I'm ready.
Here we go. Scott is an atheist calling from New York. Pronouns are he, him, wants to know how to reconcile with Reformed MAGA people. Hey, Scott, how are you?
I'm all right. I should tell you, I wrote like 2 paragraphs down because my ADHD meds are out of stock, and I wouldn't have called in if I didn't really think this was like a good question. If you want to interrupt, I'll go for it. I'll clarify, and if you can tell me where I'm wrong if afterwards, I guess, if you don't mind.
Sure.
My question is broadly how do we handle our treatment of Reformed MAGA members? If there were more of an off-ramp from the beginning, would there have been cooler heads and more openness to learn and be aware of their blind spots? Also, do we need their recruitment in fighting the rich? They seem capable of hate. How do we square that? The South still romanticizes the fight they put up for the lifestyle they led during and before the Civil War. We don't want this to happen again. Is accountability possible out of necessity or prevention, not hate? If we get out of this mess, is there something we should seek, or should we just?
Okay, Scott.
I'm
not taking notes. I'm writing it all down, and I'm not playing 20 questions. So let's do this. Let's do this as efficient. It's all right. Let's do this as efficiently as we can. When you say, how do we reconcile with Reformed MAGA folks? How do you know they're Reformed?
It's a good question.
I just raised a bunch of money along with my friends for recovering from religion. I'm hoping that very soon there's also a recovering from Republican organization as well. But, when you say they're Reformed, when somebody says, hey, how do you reconcile with someone who has completely changed so that they are not the terrible, thinker that they were before?
I think there are examples of some people that feel remorse for others instead of like things that just happen to them. But I don't, to be honest, I don't know where the line is. And that's a good question.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, to me, if somebody came up and said, man, I had it all wrong. I was misinformed. I was ill-informed, and stuff that I thought wasn't true, or stuff that I thought wasn't true was, and stuff that I thought was true wasn't. And okay, if that's the case, then my only statement to them is, cool, welcome back to reality. Please help the rest of us start fixing this. But what I find is that people who are claiming to be Reformed MAGA are folks that were fine with the leopard eating somebody else's face. And then when the leopard started eating their face, that became a problem. And that's not reformation. That's waking up and realizing that, oh, I didn't know this was going to impact me, in which case you haven't reformed at all. You are just now in the bucket with all the people you were willing to piss on.
That's interesting. I don't understand how I guess we can't prevent this type of thing from happening. I mean, apparently a third of us are just not empathetic. Is that possible? Or overlook that kind of feeling, or I don't know. What's that about?
Yes, Scott, it's been a difficult pill for me to swallow, but the world is much stupider, much less empathetic, much less well-informed than I ever imagined was possible.
Insane.
But Scott, I do think you're onto something in that there needs. I do think as an outside observer, as a Canadian observer, Canada and Australia almost suffered the same fate. We escaped it, but it was interesting dynamic to watch. I think there is this rule of a third. I think you're right. A third of people aren't empathetic, but I think you're also right that a lack of a soft off ramp is a problem. I think there does need to be some plan, some methodology, some way of an off ramp so that people, because the "I told you so" and or why were you so stupid? Those are not like the helpful. You want to be right?
We don't. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm just saying we historically don't make good decisions while we're angry, right? Isn't that what they say?
Indeed. I don't have a choice. I'm always angry now, so I have to make decisions.
Yeah, me too. I'm Captain America that way. I'm Bruce Banner that way. I'm always angry. But
I'm angry, but I'm like, I do like logistically, and even like if you ask me emotionally, I do feel like empathy for them even sometimes, like right away, and then I think, oh, these are people that hate me or hate others that I like, and
Well, one thing that both church and political right does better is it's welcoming to people. I think church and the right tend to not eat their own as much and have at least at the front of the tent is very wide and welcoming and accepting all comers. And I think that is something that secular people and left-leaning people could learn from, and is a weakness.
Yeah. Wow, what a tough deal we got right now.
Yes.
I appreciate you addressing this. I didn't mean to, I was obviously looking for, holes or things in my logic. So I do appreciate the way,
Just
you
if
kind of set me straight there.
you seem to be valuing empathy. You said like you were sad that a third of the people don't have empathy. All I can say is be empathetic yourself, and especially, I do relate to myself when I make all my videos. It's like, well, what would the former version of me who believed all this stuff have been welcome to hearing? And so, if that is a goal of yours to be welcoming and be a soft off ramp, just make sure you practice that empathy as well, because there are reasons people think that way, and not all of those reasons are in their own control.
I get that, and that's some of the problem I have is like, as somebody who believes things are probably determined, it's difficult to square my anger. I don't know if that's just an instinct that's, evolutionary, but evolution has to do with evolution. But my also question is, how much can these people change if it's a physical thing? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Anger tends to come from having your expectations of reality not match the actual evidence of reality. And those of us who are going to operate based on evidence, those of us who want the best methods of understanding the world, we're more likely to get angry because we have a particular expectation. And then when it's defeated, the question then becomes, how could I have been so wrong? And so you begin to change. And what we find, and this is the disappointing thing for me, when I find out I was wrong about other people, it's not because I was missing factual information. It's not because I was wrong about the data. I was wrong about people. I was wrong about not everybody is as diligent as wanting to have true beliefs, about going and investigating, about learning something. Not as many people are as diligent about thinking about how this is going to impact others. Paul's got a new video out, Paul's got a new video out, which I have not finished yet, but it's about evidently Rhett, I think, from, is it
Rhett McLaughlin? Yeah.
Good morning. Good mythical morning.
Good mystical morning. Yep.
Yep. Is an atheist and did a video with Alex O'Connor, and then a whole bunch of apologists decided to group the wagons and give their thoughts on it, and Paul goes through it. I haven't finished watching it yet. I was watching it before we got up here, but this is where what your goals are show up immediately. Like when I'm producing content for my channel, apart from clips that might come out of here, it is, I have an idea, I want to share it. I've got some ideas, I've got some thoughts. Here's something I figured out that might be a good idea, that might be helpful for you guys, or here's the counter to this thing here. It is not just, these people are terrible. And it's in part because I remain cautiously optimistic, despite the fact that I might remain cautiously optimistic in situations where the evidence suggests I shouldn't. But that was definitely eased, or when I predicted that Trump was going to win. That was me at kind of peak. I don't think I'm right about people anymore, and I should expect the worst. And even I didn't expect, even talking about Project 2025, talking about Trump, even I did not expect what else going on. And it's like every single day. Like this morning, I woke up to news that Qatar is giving Trump a new Air Force One. So a foreign power is gifting a brand new palace in the sky version for Trump to use as Air Force One, which, when he has finished his term in office, will not be property of the US government, but will become property of Trump. Here's a $400 or $500 million airplane or whatever it is that a foreign power is gifting to the United States so that Trump can have a palace in the sky that he's going to get to keep after he leaves office, and it becomes part of the Trump library. And yet his minister of propaganda is standing out there just the other day suggesting it's absurd for anybody to think that Trump is enriching himself off this. He gave up his opulent lifestyle in order to come and serve you as president. And I'm like, how stupid can people be to think that any of the words out of her mouth about that are fucking true? I don't get it. And so when you talk about how do we potentially, if somebody truly reforms from having bad ideas and not caring about other people and voting for things that advocate, problematic scenarios, if they truly reform, great. I'm just dubious that some of these people who are now getting their faces eaten have reformed at all. It's like the kid that's fine doing something until he gets caught, and then he's incredibly sorry, but he's not sorry he did it. He's sorry he got caught.
Yeah. I guess that kind of leads into the question that I had. I'm sorry, I'm so eager to. I get nervous on the phone, but anyway, do you think these are inherent traits, or are they learned, or both, or can you change your physiology? Can you change your habits? What's the likelihood of any of that?
I don't think there's any way to answer that. I think for some people it's probably reparable, and some people it may not be.
Okay.
I changed, so it's at least possible. That's the only evidence I can ever point to for myself. It's at least possible.
I mean, yeah, I've seen it happen, right? I mean, it has happened. I know there's a lot, of people who are like, I still like Trump, but can he not, kill my daughter? Or, it's like crazy. It's a weird world. Okay, I appreciate your time, everybody.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Have a good day.
Yeah. Thanks, you too. Yeah, it's difficult because we know that some people can change. We have good reason to suspect that there are some people who are going to be immune to change. And the only thing I can say is that I don't know how to tell the difference between who's going to change and who's not until I actually interact. Whoop, did we lose something?
Not sure.
Oh, no. Sorry. Yeah, I don't know how to tell until you actually interact. And so I can't answer the question, broadly. What percentage of people are so stuck in their ways that it's a waste of time? I don't know. And honestly, I don't care, because if there are some people out there who are able to change, then I think I have a duty, as do other people, to work towards that change, because I benefited from all the people who did this stuff before me. I benefited from the people who fought the hard lessons, or fought the hard battles, who learned lessons, who figured out the wrong ways of doing stuff, who pointed out the flaws in this, who did research on this religion, that religion, this aspect of psychology, that aspect of psychology, this aspect of biology, the people who understand the financial stuff that I don't grasp, or the science stuff that I don't grasp. I benefit from all of those people. So it would seem to be absolutely the height of privilege and arrogance to say, you know what? I don't have any obligation to share what I've learned. I mean, of all the things that offend me, the notion that someone could feel that it's okay to be a sponge and benefit from all these other people, and then not do anything at all to share what you've learned and benefited. It's the weirdest thing. I don't even have a way to argue against it and say you're wrong, other than I can't do that.
Sounds like every at Bible school when they would have the call for missionaries. Matt, you sounded like you were giving that same sermon.
Yeah, it's when I was a Christian, I felt, although I frequently shirked, a responsibility and duty to, under 1 Peter 3:15 and others, to share my faith. And at that point, it was, I don't know who the Holy Spirit's going to interact with. That's not my job. My job is to be out and interacting so that the Holy Spirit has a conduit to, I don't know why that was necessary, but so the Holy Spirit shouldn't need a conduit. And if it needed a conduit, how did the first person, reach this? But on the off chance that it becomes a benefit, and I think the view is that the Holy Spirit could do this without you, but it's easier with you because of the psychology of human beings. And if human beings hear something strange for the first time, it's dismissed. And the second time, it's like, hey, wait, I've heard that before. And the third time, it's a pattern. And so similarly, if you've never heard of Jesus and the story and you think it's absurd and completely unbelievable, that makes sense. But when you find 10 other people who believe it and 50 other people believe it and a church that believes it and millions who believe it, all of a sudden you feel bad for being the one that dares to question this. Who am I to say these 300 million people are wrong? Well, I'll tell you who I am. I'm the guy that didn't just lap up what I was spoon-fed and decide to not question it. I decided to care whether or not there was good reason, in part because I felt an obligation to reach people who did not have this information and who would ask the difficult questions. And I felt, if this is true, then I should have access to the answers to the difficult questions that these people are asking. And as it turns out, if you actually go out with an eye to the truth, to seek the factual information, the empirical evidence that might reward this, you end up an atheist more often than not. And it's like, there are theists out there that will and you've heard them call in and they'll be like, Matt, you're looking for empirical evidence when no such thing is possible. Okay. I'm not necessarily looking for empirical evidence. I think that empirical evidence should be preferable for claims that impact the physical reality. But if you have some other way of knowing, I'm at least willing to consider it. I'm willing to consider that you might have a way of knowing something outside of empirical evidence. But when you listen to those people, it's either, oh, it's been privately revealed to me. Okay, well, when it's been privately revealed to me, then maybe I'll have a good reason, but your private revelation is useless to me. Or you're just evaluating it wrong, Matt. It's a thing of faith. If we could prove God, it wouldn't be a challenge for anybody to believe. Correct. Why should it need to be a challenge? What is it about the most important truth that anybody could possibly realize that makes it something you have to turn your brain off, to set aside sound epistemology, to take a leap of faith? Why is that a good thing? If you've got the answer, call in and tell us, because we're still waiting. Sophie's calling from Oklahoma, pronouns she, her. Sophie's an atheist who wants to know how atheists can find community after leaving the church. Hey, Sophie, you're on with Paul and Matt.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Paul. How are you guys doing? Do I sound okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a little hot, but I mean,
Okay.
We'll live.
All right. So my question is more just as like, I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous, but the premise is just like the church in general has been so focused on community that, like, for people like me that leave it, it's very hard to find those groups again, and it almost feels kind of predatory in a way when they like offer you this, and it feels like, well, I can just lie to myself and say, oh, I believe this to have this community. So I was wondering, like, how you guys see, like, a way for atheists to have more community in that sort of way.
Well,
This
there are a number of different organizations, but I'm going to let Paul jump in here for a bit.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there, Matt. I was going to
No,
say
you're
this.
fine.
This does relate to my last call, and I actually absolutely agree that the church does a better job of community. It's easier to rally around. It's easy to rally around an affirmative thing that we're all gonna go for than to center clubs or friendships or whatever around. Well, this is a thing we don't believe in, right? It's just inherently it's tricky. We just did a big fundraiser on the line for Recovering from Religion. They can sometimes point you in a certain way. There are one of the things that I definitely found when I was exactly the same position, struggling for like, now what? No church. I lost all my friends, lost my family, like all in the church because they're all for the church. I went into like meetup things or Facebook groups or whatever to try and find local in-person things that were centered around not being religious, around being atheists, and that works sometimes. I definitely found some great community and solidarity there. Especially what you get is solidarity. You get some understanding in that groups, but it's hard to find long-term community around that. And so I guess those are great landing spots. But what you probably need to do is build community around something that isn't just we don't believe X or we don't believe Y. At least you should think about other options. If you like throwing axes, if you like knitting, if you like reading, if you like sports, if you like curling, if you want to do you name the thing, biking, that you're probably going to find a stronger community outside the church, again, around something affirmative as opposed to around something where what we have in common is we don't believe X. And you end up, and we've all seen it. We've seen secular groups fragment because we all don't believe in X, but we have a different opinion politically or a different opinion about how to talk to people on the other side. Like it is tough to rally around that. So don't limit yourself, I guess is my whole thing. Don't limit yourself to just secular communities because they're secular communities. Find something else to common interest to go around. That's going to be stronger. But you'll also end up getting a mix of people, whether they're fully secular. There might also be religious people in that group, and keeping your ear to what that community is actually saying, because we don't necessarily throw those people away. So that was my whole thing was secular communities is not the only way to do this. Matt, advice were you gonna give?
Yeah, first of all, I agree with Paul. One of the things is, if you've got other hobbies, there are plenty of clubs for those things, and you can become a member of a number of different ones or interact with a bunch of different ones. Just be ready that some things are going to overlap. You're going to end up, in your crochet circle, and somebody's going to bring up Jesus or something. Arden and I keep and breed reptiles. We go to reptile shows, and for a while we were wanting to keep anything about being atheist or trans or anything like that out of that arena. And then it turns out we saw an actual need to be open and talk about it. So we're fine doing that. But there are purely secular organizations. First of all, there are incredibly moderate churches that I'm not personally a fan of, but the Unitarian Universalists don't care if you believe in a God. They're too God-ish or God-adjacent or quasi-religionist for me, but I appreciate the fact that, and they're more likely to be woo-leaning. So this doesn't feed the need for skepticism in me. But there are organizations like Oasis and Sunday Assembly, where there are secular groups that are building communities and structure. And it's not just, hey, we don't believe in a God, but what we do believe in is human beings and equality and, an end to religious privilege and, those types of things. And so if you just want a group about, oh, hey, we don't believe in God, cool. You can find any skeptics in the pub type thing and go have a beer on a Thursday night and sit there and joke about how you guys have all found the right answer to the easiest question in the world, which is, do we have a good reason to believe in magic? And That's a possibility, but there are proper secular organizations and there are ethical organizations and humanist organizations. You may have to try out a few, and they may not all be available in your area, especially now that I'm reminded that you're in Oklahoma. I would imagine there are
Yeah.
fewer
Mhm.
options, but I don't think that the options are gone because, for example, two of the regular hosts and co-hosts on this network both live in Oklahoma currently. And I've given, uh, I've been to conventions in Oklahoma and have interacted with organizations in Oklahoma. So depending on where you are, it may be more difficult. And if you can't find anything in your area, the best two options are number one, to start one. And if it's just you and two people meeting up at a coffee place or a whatever, to talk, that's how most of these things got started anyway. And the other option is to do it primarily online. And while I don't find that that is the same or as good, we're reaching a point where you can have, we learned a little bit more about interacting with people in more intimate fashion. And I don't mean sex, um, via Zoom calls and stuff like that, where it didn't feel as remote as just sending a text. We learned how to do that more during COVID. So it's an option. It's never going to be my preferred option, but it's somebody's only option. So we don't want those communities to go away either.
Yeah, I didn't want to like cut you off or anything. I guess to put more like be a little more specific. Like for me, I am looking more like into activism since like Oklahoma was not my first choice, as you can probably tell. But it was the safest place for me to escape from Florida, which my family was very religious there. They were also like I am trans, so I wasn't also accepted in Florida, which Oklahoma's not better to be fair, but I had more agency in my life away from that family. So like I'm more going into the activism sort of I've seen be better not only myself but other people. So like I am very much looking towards more like more groups in terms of activism for atheists, for trans people, gay people, and like it's it's a struggle.
And you're thinking you want to do that on a local level as opposed to an online level. I take it.
I would definitely prefer more local, like not to be more specific on my area, but like I know Tulsa, for instance, is a lot less hateful, but yeah, I don't know.
I think the same approach that I took. I was incredibly religious area of Canada, the most religious area of Canada, arguably, and again, it was just searching the Facebook groups, searching the meetup .com type things, where again, as Matt said, you kind of just need to find two or three of you to steal the biblical idea, but you need two or three of you to come together, and then you have something. But I think you've probably done this. I guess I'm not. I don't have a lot of tips beyond that because it's not great to just stand downtown and hold up a sign. Come hug me if you are trans affirming and are godless trans affirming person like that. That's probably not the most practical thing you can do. So I assume you've done some of these online searches.
Yeah, I've looked more into the trans side than I have the like, atheist side, but it is a lot more difficult here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess hang in there. But yeah, that's it may take you a while to find that first domino, that first person who may well be hopefully more connected in the community than you are as an interloper.
Yeah, who knows? I might just set up a Facebook post myself and see how that goes.
That's probably great. There probably are. Yeah, you're probably right. There probably is a community group in yours where you can very politely just say, "Hey, I'm looking for secular, affirming folks. What do you recommend?" And try and just keep it at that. You probably will get some feedback, and some feedback from people to stay away from, probably.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Also, one slight thing, if you don't mind me saying, uh, Matt, I do very much appreciate you, even though I couldn't make the call for the last time you guys talked to the callers. You still took my message, and I think asked Robert about like the like fear of hell sort of thing, and like recovering from that as well, which has helped me a lot. I actually was on their site immediately after that, and was going through some of their material.
I missed something. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, the last call-in show. I missed the deadline for callers, but you mentioned seeing that in the queue of like how can an atheist get over their fear of hell? And I believe you talked to
confused,
somebody
Sophie.
from RFR.
I'm confused. Are you saying that you tried to call in previously and were in the queue and I mentioned it?
Yeah, I was saying thank you because you brought it up during a call with Robert, somebody from
There
RFR.
is no way I'm going to remember that. I've done, I don't know, let's see, 4, 8, 12, 16 hours of shows since Wednesday. I'm not going to remember calls that got through, let alone ones that didn't get through, but I appreciate you calling back.
Yeah, that's okay. I was just thanking you, even if you remembered or not, and also just type thing, say hi to, I believe it's Fishing, one of the snakes, and that's all I had to say. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up a little bit, but I appreciate the kind words. So
thank you, Sophie.
Yeah, there was something like weird about the audio on the call where it kind of dipped every night for me. I don't know if it was dipping for anybody else, but anyway, much appreciated. All right. Last caller. And I say that because people are like, why do they keep taking atheist calls? I'll tell you why. There are no theists here. I don't know if they're all out pretending that they love their mothers more than they pretend on every other Sunday or not. But genuinely, there are no theist callers calling in to defend what they believe or to tell us where we were wrong. I'm pretty close to just saying that, if we get all the way to the top of the hour without a theist calling in to explain where we went wrong or, how we could have done this better or why it's a good idea to believe in God, I think we just declare victory.
That's right. Christianity will be defeated once and for all.
I get it. It's Mother's Day. More people are going to be busy. I just accidentally muted this person. Larry calling from Texas, pronouns are he, him, that wants to talk about AI and illogical arguments. So how you doing, Larry?
I'm doing fantastic, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Okay, what's up?
Well, I'm currently taking a professional education class at MIT regarding artificial intelligence. And what I've learned over the past few weeks is that AI is going to be such a enormous part of our lives over the next 5 to 10 years. And the discussions I've had with AI, I won't name which platform, but it seems to support theist arguments and does not logically analyze when you start talking about theistic ideas. It doesn't seem to logically analyze that. And so
Correct.
I think that has
not what
biases from the
What's
Yes.
being labeled
So
AI?
I'm concerned what implications that has.
What's being labeled AI is not a logical, rational analysis thing, but a predictive text thing. It's giving what it suspects the best answers would be, and it's also generally they are bottlenecked to not contradict you. If you say, what's the best way to, clean super glue off your fingers, and it spits out something, you can just tell it it's wrong. And it does not seem to have any way to say, no, in fact, I am right. Instead, it's, oh, I'm sorry for getting this wrong. Perhaps blah, 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 blah. And it goes to another one because it assumes, because it's not doing any sort of actual intelligent thinking on the topic. It's just coming up with predictive text. And so as people who don't have a good understanding of rational arguments train these generative text machines, they are training them to be just as flawed thinkers as the human beings they're interacting with.
It was sorry about my dog.
What's that?
Sorry, my dogs were barking. I couldn't hear you. I apologize.
For all of that?
No, just you were talking. You got to the point where you're talking about the people training the AI and the fact that they're not trained to teach it logical fallacies or irrational arguments.
Yeah. So if a whole bunch of let's say we took nothing but Trump and his cabinet and had them train generative AI. Do you think that AI, like from 0 to 100%, how true, how accurate do you think that AI is going to be after being trained by those idiots?
Very low accuracy.
Yep. And so when you train a system, now right now we're spoiling the system a little bit because not everybody has access to participate and train this. And so already your sample size are people with the technology and the time and the desire to do so. And if I was, let's say, a government spy organization and I wanted to disrupt another country, I would create a bunch of bots to intentionally mistrain AI such that it is giving out flawed information. It would be a disinformation sort of campaign. I don't know what protections any of them have in there to stop something like that. But right off the bat, Jimmy was like, oh, hey, you should sit down with AI and have a debate. And it can't even begin because as soon as you say, no, that's not right, this is right, it just caves. And by and large, if all it's doing is predicting what somebody else would say, I don't know what, I mean, there's some value. I'm more worried about how it's going to be misused. And I have concerns that there may not be a truly good use for it as long as it's public.
What are your concerns, Larry?
Well, so those are all great points, Matt. My concerns would be that that we don't have representation in this new age that we're going into, because this AI, as it does become more of a general intelligence, needs to have our perspective on it, and I don't see that happening. It might be happening, but to Matt's point, right now we don't have that much going on with it.
Well, I mean, it's ingested humanity, right? So it's ingested the one at Meta. They actually found a list of the books, for example, that it had ingested. Now the trouble is, of course, that 90% of the world believes in God, and so therefore 90% of the literature and books in the world are at least coming, if not advocating that, are coming from that perspective. So I don't know what you like, but our 10% are there. You could go to any of the major LLMs, and you can say, what is the best evidence against the Trinity, or what's the best evidence against Islam, or what's the best evidence against Mormonism, it can spit out something close to what the most studied person, a non-believer would say. I mean, it's there, but as Matt is saying, it's really how it's prompted as opposed to whether the data is there. So, what does representation look like to you when you say we're underrepresented in LLM data sets?
Well, the fact that it's not purely logical, I guess, bothers me. I'm an engineer by training, and I agree with the prompting. The prompting has a lot to do with what you're going to get in return. So for me, what I would like to see is something like it's trained on the majority of logical fallacies, and it can take that and run with it. And when it reads a book that's spitting out logical fallacies left and right, it should be able to identify that and lend less weight to that book as opposed to other books.
Well, you're applying a should to the system that you agree would not everyone would agree with, right? Like you need, in order to have it should do X, you need everyone to say, oh, well, the goal, we all agree that the goal is Y, therefore it should do X. But you're aware that, like, really, ultimately at this point, there isn't a consistent goal with people doing this. Some people are just doing it to say, can we do it? Some people are doing it to make the most money. Some people are doing it, altruistically. Some people are doing, like, there's just, without a common goal, do you agree that we can't even come to those shoulds?
I agree. I think it is heavily biased towards what the owners or the companies that own that is what they're going to look for. So yes, I'm in agreement with you. I guess I'll close with this. What what implications does that have for us? Being that it's expected that AI will be so integrated with everybody's jobs, maybe even replacing jobs. How does that?
You're complaining that it's a confirmation bias machine, and you're not wrong. Like, it's a confirmation bias machine, but so has social media, right? Like, social media algorithms, be it YouTube or whatever, the algorithms tend to feed you what you already believe. And before that, you self opted into books that would affirm what you believed, and before that you joined the club or society that help affirmed you. So I am not in existential dread about the confirmation bias machine, because we are just confirmation bias creatures. Or do you see this as a whole level of a different thing versus just the next step on the continuum?
I see it. The reason why I feel strongly about it is, to me, it is synonymous with or paralleled with members of our government in the United States that are driven by theistic philosophies. And so I see AI not rejecting that as being a similar problem.
Fair enough. I guess I just don't see it as I see it as just another tool for people to pacify or to affirm people who aren't critically thinking. I guess that's really, like, you shouldn't even watch the news without being a critical thinker, right? Like, it's anytime you're being fed something. Anyway, I think maybe you and I just disagree on the level of existential dread we should have. I get to the extent that if the next generation, if 5-year-olds now are going to grow up thinking that whatever AI tells me is true, I don't care what ideology it leans towards. That's a problem, right? It doesn't matter if the AI was completely trained on my books and my videos alone. I still think that's going to be a problem. So, critical thinking is really, I think the space where we have it in AI isn't a problem in and of itself. But maybe Matt feels differently.
Okay.
Nope. Yeah, I
If you,
think.
if you,
Hello?
Yeah, I'm
hey,
just saying. I think that the best thing we could do would be to train AI on skepticism and critical thinking, the best methods that we have. And if I were to have, a debate with AI in order to try to train it, we'd have to start with some baseline questions and then show where its answers conflict with those things. Things like, is is the claim that A explains B sufficient on its own to accept that A explains B is true? And the answer should be no. And so if you can get the AI to say, no, that's insufficient, then you could say, let's call that axiom 1. And then as you go through the discussion, you can say, without violating axiom 1, how would you assess this? Without violating it, and you build up a set of axioms. We would have to train it in the same way as if we were Aristotle and his band of merry logicians evaluating logical structures to determine which forms are valid. Right now, I'm not convinced that there is any AI out there that understands how or why a particular logical syllogism is valid in structure, even though they could absolutely regurgitate an exhaustive list of the 256 structures, which are valid and which ones are not. But there's no understanding there of the how and why, even if they could potentially describe it. Oh, they evaluated this and they did this. You could confuse it and just say, okay, is this particular syllogism valid? And I would hope that the same AI or, ChatGPT and stuff like that we have now that's predictive text, I would hope that we could get them trained to a point where they would consistently get it right. But more importantly, I want them to offer correction when someone says, here's my logical syllogism. Is it valid? And I don't know how hard it is because I don't work in this field, but I would think that if you can get something that can within 2 or 3 seconds scour the web and provide generative text on the subject that is sometimes largely correct, should be able to say, no, that is not a valid syllogism, because you've got major and minor premises, but your connecting terms aren't the same, or there's an equivocation fallacy between your premises, or whatever it is that show that it's bad in structure. I think that's what we need to train it, just like we think we need to train people to do that. And as long as
well, it's
people
actually
are ill-equipped at that, I don't think the chat can either. Go ahead.
it's the same thing, but it's all reward hacking. So in AI, there's actually a phrase called reward hacking, and the famous demonstration is they were trying to have AI. They're teaching generative AI to play old video games, right, and to try to hit like the best Pac-Man possible or the best like speed run of anything possible. And they came across this boat racing game where in the boat racing game, the points that you earned were actually not directly related to whether you ever won the race, and they couldn't figure it out. It's like, why, we let it play hundreds of millions of rounds of this game and it never finishes the race. And they discovered that, you actually can earn the best possible score by crashing into stuff on the side. So it just spent its whole game. It's like, so that's where you're rewarding the wrong thing. Like, you're rewarding points. You had AI really learn to play. The most success it's ever had is like chess and Go, right? Where it had very clear success criteria. You got rewarded for winning the game Go, or you got success. You got the point rewarded, for winning game of chess. It is absolutely possible to then theoretically say, well, if your goal is, airtight syllogisms that are valid and sound, you could train it that way. It's just, of course, no one on mass is trying to give it those goals. Right now, the goals are winning in an arena where literally you just say, hey, did you like this response better or this response better? So I think it's possible, but it actually just goes back to what I was saying before about, like, unless everyone agrees on what the goal of the AI should be. If the goal is to create premises that are sound and what's the other word I'm looking for there, Matt? There's sound and anyway.
Validity and soundness?
Valid and sound. Thank you. Until someone actually attempts that, we're not going to get there, and the market doesn't care. So if anyone's relying on it to do those things, you're using the wrong tool. And that's my little rant. Sorry, Larry.
Well, listen, guys, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for entertaining my call. I'm a longtime fan, and I will stay a longtime fan. And you guys have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Larry. You too.
Thanks, Larry.
All right. Hey, we've got some theist callers, and
that's exciting.
Some of them have some questions. Donovan's calling from Texas. Donovan's a theist, pronouns are him, who says, if God doesn't exist, then where does love come from? Hey, Donovan, what makes you think love comes from anywhere other than our brain?
First off, I would like to, gentlemen, if we could start off this off in prayer.
No.
Okay, I'm going to mute you, Donovan. Happy Mother's Day. Your question was, where does love come from? And I asked you a question, and you, either thinking it was amusing or whatever, decided let's start with a prayer. So let's not. Why do you think love is something that exists and has a source beyond our brain?
Sure. Yeah. Let me. I'm gonna turn off. I'm gonna move the live away because it's kind of distracting because I can hear.
Okay, I'm sorry if you weren't ready to actually be on the call-in show. Let's try this again.
Think that love doesn't come from anything other than the brain.
I'm sorry, Donovan. You have to start over. You were muted.
Okay. Sorry about that, sir.
Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the question was, what makes me think as a Christian that where does love come from other than the brain? Correct?
Well, I didn't say anything about a Christian, but thanks. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. So as a theist, I guess I'm a Christian. As a theist, I believe that love, that Jesus is love incarnate, and when we look throughout Scripture, we do see that.
Donovan.
Yes, sir.
Donovan, I don't need you to tell me what you believe. The question was why. Are you saying that because you're a Christian, you think love comes from God? So before you were a Christian, what reason would you have to think that love comes from God?
Because prior to that, I don't believe that anyone that is outside of, I think anyone outside of a Christian, and doesn't take the precepts of Jesus and God, that they don't know what love truly is.
Yes. So Donovan, I'm asking you, wow, okay, I'm going to phrase this a fifth way. How do you know that love truly is only from God and not just an experience that humans have, whether there's a God or not?
I would answer the question with a question: if love doesn't come from God, where else does it come from? Are you saying it comes from the brain?
I'm saying it does not come from anywhere. Love is a label that we put on experiential brain states, emotions, just like we do with sadness or hunger or any number of things. These are things that brains do. You are adding to that there is a real love and a real source of love that comes from a being that you haven't demonstrated, and now you're asserting what is true love. And so once again, I don't have any reason to think that love is anything but an emotion we experience, and you're claiming it's more, and I'm asking why.
Yes. So the best way that I could describe that is, I'm going to answer biblically as a Christian. I don't see out to any other religion.
No, Donovan.
No.
Donovan.
Okay. Yeah.
You're talking to two former Christians who know the Bible and know that the Bible is not going to possibly make a case at all for why you could justify that love comes from God, because we don't care what the book says. The book is not proof or evidence for the claim.
Okay. So you want me to answer outside of the book?
Yes, I would like a real, rational, evidence-based syllogism that demonstrates how love is more than merely an experience humans have and is instead necessarily sourced from a divine creator.
Sure. I'll give you an example without any type of scripture or anything. There are times when there's some people that I do not want to love. Correct. And I'm sure you guys have felt that before, where you guys do not want to love them. And I think when we talk about love being just an experience alone or an emotion, what about, let's just say I have a nephew who I love dearly, who he's my everything. And there's a day when I don't feel like loving him because he's acting up. And so my emotion and experience and my feeling is telling me that I'm angry with him because he's upset me. Now, what do I have to cling to? Like, what do I have to choose in order for me to love him regardless of how he's acting, even if I don't like it? Because my emotions are telling me, man, I just do not want to love him right now because he's upsetting me and he's not getting it. He keeps acting
So
up.
you think love is... So hold on, you're conflating things here, right? Because obviously there is the happy feeling type of
Sure.
love.
But what happens if I don't feel that?
Hold on,
Stop
Donovan.
talking.
Donovan.
Yeah,
Donovan.
Sorry about that, sir. Sorry, sir.
But love can also be defined, and there's a myriad of different ways, and I wish we'd start with definitions. Love can also be mean, right? Wanting the best for someone, right? That is another form of being loving, right? I want the best for person X or people in general. And so you, as the uncle in that case, know that the best person, even though they currently don't have warm fuzzies for your nephew, that because you want the best for that person, you will continue to feed them and take care of them and all that kind of thing, right? That's just wanting the best for someone. Is there? Do you understand that that is entirely also a biological response, right? Like there's nothing divine about wanting the best for someone, even when that thing will make them temporarily sad, or make you temporarily sad.
My question is, where am I grabbing that truth from? That
No, sir.
Of
No,
how
Donovan, stop. Listen to me very fucking carefully. You can ask as many questions as you want to say, where does that come from if not for God? You can find 500 ways to phrase your argument from ignorance fallacy. We are asking you, how do you demonstrate that this necessarily comes from a God? Simply saying you can't explain where it comes from does not in any way demonstrate that it necessarily comes from God. And you've already delved way into absurdity by suggesting that it is impossible to both love someone and be mad at them at the same time, which is absolute bullshit. And the fact, stop saying yup, stop talking. And the fact that you'd use that as a demonstration suggests that you have a misunderstanding about human psychology, because I asked you, how do you prove that love must come from God? And your entire case, which I'd let you go on about, is, well, there are times when I don't want to love someone. Well, congratulations. Even if
I'm trying to have a civil,
stop fucking talking.
With you, and you're
stop fucking
trying to have
talking.
a civil conversation. You and
okay, you're now muted, and you'll be lucky if you get to speak again, because you intentionally interrupted me right there to suggest that I'm not capable of having a civil conversation when you're the prick who's interrupting me while I'm exposing your fallacies. Now, let me get back on track. Even if your personal belief in God acts as a MacGuffin that guides you to love people, even when you wouldn't otherwise normally want to love people, that is not a demonstration that God is the source of love. At most, it is a demonstration that the MacGuffin, a false belief, is the source of love. You have to demonstrate that love comes from God and only comes from God to make your case. You cannot show that it comes from your belief in God, because that is not God. Your belief in God is not God. I don't know why you felt the need to keep interrupting me and pretend that I'm incapable of a civil conversation instead of waiting for me to finish, unless you are just being dishonest. So we're back at the beginning. You think that love must come from God. We're asking you to demonstrate what the rational justification is, not the biblical one, not your personal belief, not how confused you are about it. What is the rational justification for saying that love can only come from God? Please continue.
Okay. I guess I would say my I'm not I'm going to try not to ask a question, but I'm going to try to understand because in order for me to make my case, I'm saying that love does not come from a divine being, but rather it is simply biological. Is from what I'm understanding that you're telling me, is that Donovan that love.
I'm muting you now, Donovan, because you're not doing this right at all. And now I think you're intentionally just trying to waste time, and that's not a good place. So let's try this again. I'm not asserting that love is merely biological. Let's pretend that Paul and I have no explanation for what love is or where it comes from. You're the one who is in here making a claim about where love necessarily comes from. And it is fallacious to shift the burden of proof away from your claim by suggesting, well, of course the butler did it. What other explanation is there? How do you explain love if it didn't come from the butler? How do you explain love if it didn't come from eating bananas? Your claim that love must necessarily come from God is absurd to me and is unjustified to me as claiming that love comes from eating bananas. You don't have to give me a preamble on how you're going to avoid questions. You don't have to talk about what Paul and I believe, because what Paul and I believe is completely irrelevant to what you believe and why. So we're going to ask you one final time, why should we be convinced that love must come from God?
Well, I'm kind of put in a corner here, but I guess I would just say that I can't really. I have nothing. I don't believe that as a human being, that when you are choosing to love someone, regardless of how you're feeling, if I don't feel like I love that person, but I have to choose to love them, I don't see what truth I can grab hold of in an atheistic worldview, in a Buddhistic worldview, in any type of worldview other than Christianity. I don't see how it.
So, Donovan, I'm completely done with this call, but Paul might not be. So I want to make that clear that I'm going to let Paul keep talking to you. I'm going to unmute you, and I will not be interacting with you further because, once again, all you did was reframe your objections, your fallacious shifting of the burden of proof to say, oh, I don't want to ask a question and I don't want to say what's your explanation. I'm just going to assert that I don't see how you could explain love without God. Well, congratulations. Your failure to use any imagination or care about evidence does not make your point. But I'm going to let Paul interact with you because I no longer care to hear what you think, because you will not justify it with a why without being dishonest and suggesting that, you were fucking talking while you were muted. I'm so fucking done with you. Go ahead, Paul.
I didn't say anything. Sorry about that. I
You
didn't
were
mean to upset you,
talking when
sir.
I fucking unmuted you, you liar.
I said thank you. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful, sir.
So Donovan,
please forgive me.
Donovan,
I didn't mean to. Hi, Paul.
Donovan, hi. Would you agree that the categorization of what you just said is that you observe things that you put the label of love on in the world, and that includes, in your observation, occasionally doing things against your own self-interest or against your own mood, and as you observe those things, that you don't know what an explanation is, and so you feel justified in attributing that to God. Is that a fair categorization? Is that a fair way of saying what the position you presented? Because that seems to me what you presented.
Yes, Paul. Thank you so much. And so, yeah, what I was presenting, and you said it, you hit the nail on the head. And I understand that can be that argument can't really have like a real tangible evidence. But the reason that I was saying that was because as a Christian, and I'm sure you have many Christian viewers. And by the way, I admire your guys' work and what you guys are doing and the effort that you guys put into it. So I by no means am here to fight with you or argue with you, but rather just to seek to understand. And so what I really wanted to say was that can you, just for other Christian audiences who are also seeking truth, because I think it's great to wrestle with truth, is if what truth, as I'm assuming you guys are atheists, correct? Or you are, Paul? You're not a theist,
correct?
Okay, and so so I think like for the Christian viewers would be like, if I'm choosing to love someone regardless of how I feel because they're making me angry, but I have to choose to love them in the midst of that because I genuinely care for them because I want the best for them, what truth am I going to grab a hold to that tells me, like, what standard am I going to grab a hold to
Well,
say
hold
I
on.
still have to love them?
Let's posit, Donovan, that there is no truth to be learned from that. Is that a problem?
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Are you? You said there is no truth to be learned from that.
Yeah. What if there is no deeper thing other than I am choosing against my own self-interest to serve someone in some way? Let's say there is no truth beyond that. That's the entirety of it. So what?
Okay, got you. Perfect. Got you. No, okay, so I love that. I think that helps me understand kind of how to explain more. So you're saying, what if there is no truth? What if it's just someone choosing to love someone regardless of how they feel? So my question would be, can that be problematic? And this is how my question would be. This is probably how it can be problematic. And you can rebuttal me on this or answer this for me. Could that be problematic? Let's just say if someone says, okay, well, today I'm going to beat my neighbor. I'm going to beat him up. Okay?
Hold on, Donovan. Is this Donovan?
Yes.
Is this going to be an appeal to utility, an appeal to like the way we want the world to be?
No. This is going to be appeal to if we give everyone the choice to choose how they love someone in the midst of wanting the best for someone. Can it be problematic if someone says, "Well, I'm choosing the best for this person is to harm them. That's just what I'm choosing."
Yeah, no. So
and then
okay, so
next to them,
Donovan, you just did what you promised you weren't going to do. You're appealing to wouldn't the world be a bad way that you don't prefer? If there wasn't a grander truth, so an appeal to that the world would be worse if that's the way it was. Isn't you understand that that's not actually an appeal to how it is? You're now just you're calling to an emotion of like, wouldn't it be terrible? And I'm like, well, maybe it would be terrible if everyone decided that that harm was the best way forward. Sure, that would. I don't think that would be great. But that tells me nothing about. That tells me nothing at all, right? About whether there's a God behind it.
Yeah.
That it creates a world we don't prefer is irrelevant.
Okay, I got you. So then, as an atheist, and again, I'm a Christian, and so I'm glad that we can have dialogue because I believe that it's great that we have dialogue. Are you saying, as an atheist, saying it can be bad? I mean, but at the end of the day, I mean, is that their choice? Is that what you're saying? Like it can be bad if someone chooses to.
I'm saying that bad is also a label that we put on things. Bad is a label we give to things that we don't prefer, right? And good is the label we give to things that we do prefer. And some people prefer different things, which is why you have to always clarify, what do you mean by bad? What do you mean by good? I'm saying that whether something is bad and whether something is good by whatever label and whatever standards you want has absolutely nothing to do with the truth of the way things are. And what Matt and I what Matt's been trying to ask you the entire time is not why should we prefer that there be God that grounds love. It's how can you demonstrate that there is a God that grounds love? And you've been reverting back the entire time to appeals to preference. Do you at least understand that that's what you've been doing, and agree that?
I think. I think. Yes, I hear you, and I agree to an extent. How about that? Is that all right? I agree to an extent. And I think I just was trying to give it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Tell me what they're.
Something?
Yeah, are we working towards the same goals? Are you at any point in this call attempting to say why it is the case as opposed to why you prefer it's the case? If you don't, if you're not intending to ever at this point in this call explain why it is the case, regardless of anyone's preference, then we probably could just end it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll make this case then. I don't believe that a human being. I don't see how a human being can if there's no truth at all. Let's just say there's no truth, right?
Well,
that everyone
that's not what I said. But carry on.
They're bad in. Yeah, you didn't say that. That's not what I'm saying. You just said what if. Like, you didn't say that. That wasn't your claim. So please forgive me. I didn't mean to misrepresent you.
Here,
You didn't say that. You didn't say that.
let's get to it.
So yeah. So I would say this: that if there is who define, I think it'd be problematic if we don't agree that love comes from God and nothing else. It would be problematic if we don't obey His precepts, because if we leave objective truth up to the human being, someone can say, well, I'm going to harm my neighbor. And I think that that's the best way for them, and that's the best way to love them.
Okay, so
There's no one that can say, there's no one that
so
can,
I
there's no one that
Donovan. I
Yep.
asked you if you intended to make an appeal that wasn't to whether something is the way you'd prefer it or whether you not prefer it, and you just literally just gave me a literal thing about telling me how bad things would be, how you would not prefer the way to go. And that seems to be what you're basing your thing on. There's so many problems what you did. You spoke about objective morality, and then you at the same time you said, what if one person has objective morality X and another person has objective morality Y, which then it's not objective, right? If there's two possible flavors, it can't be objective. Donovan,
yeah, I apologize.
I mean, go.
I didn't mean
So what
to.
I want you to do,
I apologize.
call again someday. Think about, so you listen back to this. Everything you've said is, I prefer it to be a certain way. Therefore, everyone else should also want it to be a certain way.
No,
and not
no.
only Jonathan doesn't want it to be that way, that must be the way it is. And that is how you're arguing right now. All of your arguments have been about what your preference is.
Yeah.
So think about that.
So I think towards the end, I was saying prefer because you wanted me to make a statement, like a case. But in the beginning, I was just saying, where can love come? Where do you grab hold of? What truth do you grab hold of? If you're choosing to love someone, even though you don't want to, what standard do I hold to say, no, I have to love this person?
The only standard I think you need for that, the only standard is preferring flourishing, which is empathy, and wanting to reduce harm, which is also empathy. And those are entirely, as far as I can tell, and I'm not on trial here, because you didn't, but I'm sitting here like it's so obvious to me that those two things are sufficient to generate the same moral instincts that you have. But none of that means anything, right? None of that demonstrates that either my view or your view is rooted in anything other than our preference and what our biology tells us. So, Donovan, go back, listen to this again, think about whether you can come up with some kind of argument that isn't just, I want it to be God, therefore it must be God. And try again on a different show. Thanks for calling.
Sure. Thank you. Hey, Paul. Thank you so much. And Matt was your partner's name. Matt, thank you so much for y'all's time. I really appreciate it. And thank you for allowing me on the show. And I love that we can have healthy dialogue. And I do hope that we can have another conversation again, and maybe one that's offline. Maybe because I'm trying to understand. And so I admire you guys. Thank you so much.
Okay. Think about it first. All right.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Y'all have a great day. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
We have no callers right now.
We have no callers right now.
I actually prefer it because the only theist who's going to call in is someone who will not actually engage and address this in an honest fashion, because right down to the very end, it was, hey, what can I appeal to that tells me I must love this person when I don't want to? Nothing, because there is no necessary requirement that you love anyone. The very notion that you must love someone that you don't love is not only creepy, but it is completely unjustified. So he's conflating this idea of, I don't want to love this person, but God says I must, so I will. That's the excuse that he gives for saying, wow, I'm really upset with that person, or I don't like that person, or I don't want to be nice to that person, but something within me realizes that that would be bad. And the thing that's within you that realizes that would be bad is perhaps empathy, but also it may be a complex recognition that the world is better when we cooperate and worse when we're in conflict. That simple aspect of game theory, that truism, that this is the better way, is not always easy to recognize. But the very notion that there needs to be a source for love, and that source also needs to fill your desire to justify loving someone when you don't want to, is the exact same thing everybody else has done with a God. It's a God of the gaps. You don't understand human emotions. You feel things. They're conflicted. They're confusing. You really can't find a good reason to care about this person, and yet you still do. And so what's the explanation for that? For me, it's really simple. The reason I still care about them is because they're a human being who has value, in part because of what they might do for me and the rest of the world. You can get to altruism and benevolence through purely selfish motivations. I can want absolutely nothing but what is best for me. And as it turns out, because I'm a human being that has to share space with other people, what's best for me is frequently what is best for someone else. Even if there's a short-term sacrifice on my part, like, well, I'm not going to go down that. It's a cheap shot. Even if there's a short-term sacrifice on my part, I'm looking at the long game. And it's like, we can't tell who's going to change their mind until, even after we talk to them, because maybe that caller's never going to change their mind. Maybe they're going to change it in 20 minutes when something Paul said clicks in. Maybe they're going to change it next week if they call in, or the week after that if they call in. Who knows what it's going to be? But what I can say is that for me personally, if I've explained something and then explained it again, and I have to keep asking you to focus and answer the question that's asked, and you don't, you're not ready to learn yet. You might be really desirous of some learning, but until you're ready to focus and listen and say, oh, here's the question, let me try and answer it. But when you're just preparing, you've got this idea stuck in your head, and now you're going to go with a script, which is, okay, I don't understand why that is. How could you explain it as an atheist? Well, atheism is irrelevant to that. I can talk to you about human psychology and give you what the justification is, but I'm not the one that called in asserting that love has a source and that source is God. Does sadness have a source? How about hunger? How about lust? Does love come from God, but lust comes from Satan? And if there's a second agent out there that can essentially provide me with emotional experiences and serves as the source for that, why is that a problem? Is lust a problem? Because, for example, the Bible suggests that lust is a problem, and yet lust is absolutely the foundation for 90 some odd % of the population's existence. I'm sure there are always exceptions, but generally, all of us are the product, or most all of us are the product of lust. Oh, yes, but that was lust within the bounds of marital beds for some, maybe. But you know what? For the people who are opposed to a woman's right to choose, for the people who are opposed to abortion access and abortion as healthcare, even in the cases of rape and incest, they're going to look at a young girl who is an abused victim who's pregnant and say that God has a plan for that baby. You shouldn't kill it. That baby exists and is part of God's plan. And so the lust and perversion that sourced that child sourced something that God wanted. So there's this intricate tapestry that you've got to navigate around when you start suggesting that love is sourced by God, but lust is sourced elsewhere. Not only does it deny the fundamental aspects of our psychological makeup, but it is in conflict with your own beliefs. It's really, really strange. But it's like you begin with this, hey, where does love come from? Why not begin with, as Paul wanted, what is love? Baby, don't hurt me. But let's talk about it, because within psychology, there are a number of different categories of things that we list as love. There's a familiar love, a family love. I love Paul. Paul's a friend of mine. I don't love Paul in a romantic sense. Sorry, bud. I don't love Paul in a sex sense. Sorry, or you're welcome. But We recognize that there's a difference between a familial love, a romantic love, and an erotic love, because you can have romance and be desiring that sort of connection without desiring sex. This is something that a lot of people get confused about. A lot of asexual people, they're, oh, these people are weird, they don't want sex. That's not what being ace is. And similarly, people get this confused about people on the autism spectrum, that, well, they can't experience emotions, and they're basically just the rough equivalent of a psychopath. No, that's wrong too. And it would be so beneficial if people would go out and stop running on their assumptions and actually investigate some of this. Because when we say this is love, and by the way, even within Christianity, there are different loves. There's agape love, which is the love that God is supposedly the source of, the love that I don't think exists. But even within the realm of Christianity, there's agape love, and then philia love, and I forget what the third one is. It may be eros, but in any case, they already recognize that same category of feelings and experiences have different uses and potentially different sources. Not that they are sourced by something other than the brain, apart from agape love, which is like God's conduit to love despite all this. But that type of love, I have no reason to think it exists. And so while the caller is sitting here saying, what is the thing that tells me I must love someone even when I don't? Delusion, wishful thinking. There isn't. And the notion that love ought to be a certain way is another assumption in that conversation, that, oh, I ought to love someone. That's a religious instruction without grounding. There's no imperative in the universe that you should care about anybody else. It's all conditional. I should care about someone else because I like them. I should care about someone else because they have value to me or others. I should care about someone else because this creates a better society when we care about each other. You can come up with any sort of pragmatic justifications you want, but there's no imperative from the universe that says, thou must love, or just like there isn't anything that says, thou shalt not steal. The Bible says that because that's how people try to encourage other people to do the right thing when their brains prevent them from seeing that it's the right thing. I'm here to correct the brain, not God. If God wants correction, he can come talk to me himself, and that hasn't happened. We've got a web caller calling in.
Hi.
Lulu's calling in. I guess it doesn't say anything here about your religious beliefs or anything else, but Lulu says, what are your guys' thoughts on energy frequency manifestation? Lulu, what are we talking about? How can we help?
I know. I am a seeker, of truth, and I have personally deconstructed.
Hello?
Uh-oh.
Oh, you're calling from the web client. If you're on your cell phone, I'm pretty sure that it just went to sleep. So you have to tap your phone to wake it up. And then you have to also tap the browser.
Okay.
And then we can hear. And now we can hear you again.
You can hear me?
Yes.
We can now.
Okay. So as I deconstructed, and so I'm I know this is primarily for like Christians calling in, but I've just recently, this is going to sound funny, but I hadn't really considered like atheist view, because just coming out of deconstruction and like fundamental Christianity, it felt so good to not, my personal, what I came out of was Calvary Chapel, so very fear driven, very, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So yeah, so it just felt so good to shed the layers of that fear and not and kind of take back that power of like, okay, I don't have to have this like wound of dreading the future, and I don't have to carry that around anymore. Um, so I've just considered myself. It allowed me to kind of explore that spiritual side rather than it just be this, like not really good news. Like you have to believe this in order to get to the good stuff in a sense. So I've just kind of been in this space of, you know, just allowing not having to judge people has been amazing. Like not having to do all the, like, be in that negative space of, I feel like Christianity offers. Anyway, so I was just curious but I've been drawn to shows like this because I love hearing the critical thinking side of it. And it's kind of shocking to come back and hear the, just the closed-mindedness. Like I knew Christianity was closed-minded, but like to actually hear it talked out has been just awesome. And I love listening to it because you guys lay it out
I'm prepared for
great.
you to suggest that I'm closed-minded, but I have no idea what spiritual means or what a spiritual side
Yeah.
is or how anybody could possibly explore a spiritual side.
Okay. For sure.
So what do you mean by that, Lulu? What do you mean by spiritual? Because I'm equally confused. And you might have to tap on the phone again.
And you may have to tap again.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're back.
Yep.
Okay. So when I deconstructed, I was just from my own experience, like seeing the universe, and I am not a scientist, so I can look at the world around me and be amazed, and I don't know how it all came to be, but I can see the mystery of it and the beautifulness and I know it's not perfect because but so for me it was just such a relief to be like, oh, I can I can wonder at the creation, because that's my background, so I think just holding on to that and
I'm with you.
and then
I'm
understanding.
with you on
Yeah, go ahead.
wonder. I'm with you on wonder. I still don't know what you
Yes.
mean by spiritual, and I don't.
Sure.
I don't buy the notion that that the universe is a creation. But that's probably just you're calling it that out of habit, I would suspect. But I still don't know what spiritual means.
Right. So I think for me, I think it's the okay, and then the more that I learned about like frequency and vibration, and that certain emotions have different frequencies. Like, what are your
That's not
guys'
true.
thoughts on that? It's
I have
not.
no reason to
Okay.
think that's true. It doesn't even make sense to me to say emotions have different frequencies.
Yeah, what does that even mean?
Right. Yeah. No, I hear you. It's interesting to me to hear. Like, what about quantum physics? Like, do you guys?
No. You need to go back to. You asked us about the frequency of emotion, and
Right.
I need to know anything at all.
Like
You
the
said
resonance,
you researched
like
that
the
and you learned about it.
Resonance. Yeah.
What do you think frequency and resonance are? Tell me what they are.
I think that, for me, I think that matter in and of itself, like when they have zoomed into it.
Hang on.
Yeah. Mama, I found it before. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah.
I do not accept the notion that there are esoteric truths. I don't think that that what a frequency is true for you, but not for somebody else. Do you think that that's the case, that frequency is something for you and that it's not that for somebody else?
Absolutely. No, I think everyone has.
So
yeah, go
I
ahead.
got you. So we're still waiting for what you mean by spiritual and what you mean by frequency. And I would tell you that there is absolutely no reality that begins at this point that is in any way improved by you starting to talk about quantum physics or quantum mechanics. Those have nothing to do with anything spiritual, and they may not have anything to do with anything that you're talking about frequency wise. So we don't need to go anywhere near that. I just need you to explain, what do you mean by spiritual and what are you talking about with frequencies? Because I don't recognize what either of them mean or that it's real.
For sure. Yeah. I think like my journey has been looking at these ancient texts of just without labeling them as anything other than other people in different times trying to figure out philosophical and science questions, you know? So I don't so I think when people say spiritual, to me, and what I have, and I mean, I'm a busy mom. I have 4 kids, so deconstructing has been a challenge in and of itself. Just being busy and not, like not being able to take a bunch of classes or, so just sort of doing this in my, spare time. So I think so. Can you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
What
So
do you
we're
mean by
looking.
spiritual, and what do you mean by frequency?
Yeah. So I think like Christianity really strips people of their power in and of itself, because you're always outsourcing, like what you are perfectly capable of making right decisions, of choosing love, in that moment of,
What do you mean by spiritual, and what do you mean by frequency? I don't think that what Christianity does to people is remotely relevant to defining spiritual.
right. No, I know. And I'm
Then every time we do this, every time we try to get you back on track to ask you to just simply define what it is that you're talking about, you do the exact same thing. You say right and then no, I know. And yet all you're doing is acknowledging that every word that came out of your mouth after we asked you a question was irrelevant to the question. How many kids you have, what's going on, the fact that you're not an expert, that you've studied this, quantum mechanics. What do you mean by spiritual? We can't move forward to talk about spiritual searches until we know what you mean by spiritual.
I think being connected to something higher.
Okay. Connected to something higher. So if I'm touching a building or a bird.
Right. No, I think something more like the parts that we can't see.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No, I know. I get that. I think that
Oh my
that's
God.
where no, I'm saying like there's lots of like we can't see the wind, like we can't touch the wind, but it's there.
I can absolutely demonstrate wind, and in fact you can see it with the right equipment, but we can definitely see the effects of wind. I'm done. Go ahead, Paul. I'm going to be no good here, and that's my fault. That's my fault. I'm not going to be good at this.
So Lulu, yeah, we're, as you can sense, we're a little bit frustrated because you're calling us to ask what we think about frequency and what we think about these kind of things. So do you at least conceptually understand why your inability to define the things is tricky? Do you at least understand that conceptually?
Of course. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Absolutely.
So is part of your journey? Is part of your journey to define these things for yourselves, or do you don't care? Is this kind of a vibes thing? Like, is this? I'm not, or have you tried to define them?
I'm happy to be in a space where I'm open-minded and I can explore these things without feeling like, something awful is going to happen after I die, or I have to figure this out in order to have a fulfilling life. Like I'm okay with just being, and I'm okay with that. Like I'm just
right. But you called in.
But I don't want there to be these lines where like we all, I just want to be able to explore these things with others with totally different.
Are Matt and I wrong to? And you might be calling them lines to at least want definitions of words. Is that too closed-minded?
No, of course not. I honestly.
Okay. So spirituality, Lulu, you said spirituality was connection to something greater than yourself. I feel like perhaps you mean that something just non-individualistic, I feel like, is what you maybe mean. But I feel like we maybe can't go there. But you definitely made a claim about emotions having frequencies. Is that something you still would say that you can say as a fact, that emotions have frequencies? And you might have to tap your phone again.
I'm so sorry. I think mostly I was, what I meant was like where our attention goes, like things, like that's where the energy will flow, or things of that sort.
So you're basically saying you're not using the word frequency any longer, and you seem to be using energy in terms of not like matter and energy, but
to me it's the things that we can't see, but we know that when we put our mind on something, or we sit, or meditation, or we calm our nervous system, like things like that, like we can't really see it, like it's subtle.
But Lulu, you recognize that if you were in an MRI and you started to meditate, that neuroscientists could absolutely observe your brain chemistry adapting to your change of attitude, right? Like, okay, so they are things you could see.
Oh, for sure.
Theoretically.
Yeah. I mean, like in your own body, you don't know, but if it's something from the outside showcasing, or like,
right,
for sure.
So, am I right in saying you no longer will assert that emotions have a frequency? Like you'll drop that from your list of
sure. And
claims.
I'm very new to all of this, so it's what I take in, and I don't have very many people to hear like what.
What do you what do you think frequency is?
I think that everything has a frequency, and everything is vibrating at a certain whatever level.
So you think frequency? You think frequency is related to vibrations?
I think it's in the same family.
So frequency is. Let me ask you as far as I know, frequency is how often something happens, right? That's the whole extent of what frequency is, right? How often something, how frequently does my dog eat? How frequently, do we hold this show? How many times a minute is your heart beating? Like those are things that you just count, right? Right.
Yeah.
So if you said that emotions have frequency, you're literally to me just saying, how often do I hate somebody?
I might mean vibration, like how it makes us. Yeah.
Okay, so now vibration is an oscillation, right? It's a physical thing going back and a physical thing gyrating within a set of space, right? Is that what you mean by vibration? Okay. Now you understand that all molecules, to some extent, are vibrating,
right?
And that all that we would be able to tell from, if you wanted to say that, that vibrations in some sense, and I'm not even saying this is true, but when we feel one thing versus another thing, the number of vibrations of molecules was different. That really wouldn't tell us anything about that there's anything in the universe beyond our brain, right?
Right.
So what do you mean then when you call and say, what do you think about that emotions have energy or emotions have vibrations, and my dog's about to go nuts? You understand why we don't see that as a coherent thing to even ask a question?
I can, yeah. I think the research and the exploration that I have done, it makes sense to me as I'm taking it in, and I think I think I'm holding on to the creator and things like that because, and I think it's just still a layering, taking off of layers,
So,
and I hadn't really listened to. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, research in this extent means what? What does research look like when you talk about that you've researched that emotions have frequencies? What does research mean in this case?
I think that when we're more in our heart and we calm our nervous system down, which all really goes back to like we really don't know what else there is except what comes from our mind, which is similar to what, because that's how you view the how this experience of life, like it.
I've yet to see any reason that we are having experiences that is anything other than related to what's happening in our mind, though I'm open to it.
Right.
If one of those cases.
Yeah.
But
sure.
But what do you mean by research? You then told me what was intuitive to you. And if you mean that research is just what's intuition, that's not great, right?
Well, yes. One of the first things that I stumbled on was like heart and mind coherence. And that helped me sort of realize, like, okay, it's not necessarily like
when you say heart, do you mean literally the organ that pumps blood?
Yes. I mean that's where the yes. So like when you're able to
so what does it mean that the organ that what does it mean to say that the organ that pumps my blood is coherent with my brain? What does that mean?
It's from the research from the HeartMath Institute. When there's like a coherence and like when we calm our nervous system,
but
there's like neurites in our heart
what do you think coherence means? What does coherence mean?
I think it means stepping into that space of I'm able to calm my.
So do you literally mean that when your heart rate that when you're more calm, that the number of beats per minute, the actual frequency of your heart? Are you just saying that when you're calm, that your heart beats less frequently? Oh, I think, and you might be muted again.
I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah. I mean, technically, I guess.
Because do you think that the heart?
Totally
do you think that
it's like why bring the spiritual into this? Which I totally get. Like I'm not sold. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. But
no, and that's fine because you weren't even able to define what spiritual means. So that's why Matt and I are like, well, yeah, you're there's an organ in your chest
and I use
that moves. There's an organ in your chest that moves blood around. And that
but you asked about research. So the research that kind of broke the mold for me was from the HeartMath
so Paul,
Institute.
Go ahead, Matt.
Paul, the HeartMath Institute is a pseudoscience woo factory that is not science at all, but promotes paranormal and clairvoyant activities. So her research is in a bunch of New Age claptrap.
Okay.
Okay.
But Lulu, I kept asking you questions, right? And I was trying to do it methodologically. Just trying to do it in a systematic way, right? I was trying to say, well, what do you mean by resonance? What do you mean by frequency? What do you mean by coherence? Because you were throwing out these words that if I literally was breaking down your sentence, it was like you're just saying the organ that pumps blood doesn't do it as often when I'm calm. And that's like a nothing statement, right? Like you understand that holds no significance beyond biology. And this is what I would love for you to do when you're researching is like, don't move past the sentence until, because I was in the same boat as you. I believed lots of weird things. But it literally came down to when I was like, well, what does this sentence even mean? And what is it saying? And is it saying anything beyond just something that intuitively feels nice? So when you're going to call in and ask Matt and I, what do we think about sentences that make me feel a certain kind of way, then we're just going to be like, well, yeah, that's that. There's actually science behind why certain things make you feel a certain kind of way. And that you can't attribute anything to that other than that's how biology works. So
for sure.
Do you feel like you got a sense of what our thoughts are on this kind of line of thinking?
I do, and I didn't before. So I appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, I think that was probably your goal, was to get how someone else might think about this. Okay.
It really
was.
I
hope that we were able to help.
It was.
No,
Yes, it really
this was great. Okay.
Yes.
And I would encourage you to look up the word epistemology and how do we know things and how do we come to and explore some of that side as well as these other institutes and you'll be a well-rounded person. And
Yes.
I'm very encouraged that you were able to deconstruct in amongst your busy schedule. I applaud you for that. I know that is not easy.
Thank you.
It was not easy for me.
Really not.
And I'm glad that you are on a path of seeking what truth is. I would just ask you to next maybe decide what truth even means. Maybe go look up what the definition of truth is, and that's an important step. But thank you for the call, Lulu.
For sure.
If you have more thoughts and call us again some other time, and we'll explore the next step. Thanks.
Thank you, both of you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate both of you, and thank you for showing up and
All right.
all that good.
Thanks, Lulu. Good luck with the kids. Bye.
Thank you.
See you.
Wow.
Yeah, to be fair, yes, it's difficult. I think one of the things we should probably do is to remind people that merely going about and doing Google searches and buying into air quotes science is not doing research. But in the armchair sense of, I've been researching this. Well, if you're going to just accept what HeartMath has to say, and then when I point out that HeartMath is an institute that believes in all kinds of pseudoscience stuff and has a primary thing that there's some coherence between and cooperative alignment between the hearts of humans, animals, trees, and planets. And when I point out that that's just pseudoscience claptrap, and your answer is, okay, you sound more like the person who's going to just go with the last thing you heard until somebody else comes along with something that says it sounds better. And the best advice I can give you is don't go along with anything until there's a good reason to believe it's true. Because if you do that, the other one, you're just going to constantly be sitting there going, here's what I believe now until somebody proves it wrong. Oh, somebody proved that wrong? Okay, I'm going to go with this until it proves wrong. And all that is getting somebody else to do the homework that you could do on yourself, which is to say, you know what? I'm not convinced of this. What would it take? This is why Paul's talking about looking into epistemology. What would it take and what should it take for me to actually be convinced of that? But if you think that spiritual means something to the point where you're going to use it to have spiritual explorations, at a minimum, you should be able to say what you mean by that. Like if I say I'm going to explore the psychology of humans, then I should be able to say, by psychology, I'm talking about specific perceptive brain states that amplify our character or show demonstrations of what's in our mind, the processes by which we feel things and share emotes and all of those things that get together into the internal model that we all seem to have. And if I ran across somebody who said, I don't have any internal model like that, then we'd have to have a discussion about, okay, am I the weird one? Are you the weird one? Is there just more to this than either of us saw? But at a minute, if I talk to Paul and say, hey, Paul, you know how you're sitting around and you're like, I'm really irritated at what just happened. That is what I'm describing as a part of your psychology. Something about your brain and you are reacting to something, and it's a different reaction from what somebody else might have under similar circumstances, and a different reaction than you would have under different circumstances. And so if you and I react differently to different stimuli, which we absolutely do, which is why it's very much I'm going to be of no more use in this call. Please do something, because I can't have a conversation about anything spiritual as long as people can't define it. And when you talk about, you mean the literal, by heart, you mean the literal organ that pumps. I was not expecting her at all to say that she meant the literal organ that pumps blood, because even the HeartMath Institute is not advocating that this coherence is between, the brain and the organ, but between the pseudoscientific metaphorical heart of the planet and the heart of the trees and the heart of the animals other than us.
I was equally shocked that she said yes. My line of questioning got spun there. But anyway, but I do applaud. I applaud anyone's effort to seek truth rather than be complacent. Just don't believe everything.
Yeah, go out, be a seeker, seek all the things, but be a skeptic. And by skepticism, I'm advocating for the desire to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible, the desire to make your internal model of reality as accurately mapped to reality as possible. And what that means is if you hear something like, oh, I think I have a connection to a higher power. What does that mean? I don't know what a higher power is. I hear people talk about it all the time. Oh, but you know, Matt, like God. Okay, I don't think a God exists. Well, you know, I'm just saying that there's some intelligence out there that's greater than us. And I'm like, okay, first of all, the universe is a big place. Does it seem unlikely that we are the only life? Yes. Does it seem unlikely we're the only intelligent life? Yes. Does it seem unlikely that we are the most intelligent life? Yes. I mean, all of those things potentially seem unlikely. Do I think I have or could have a connection to some more intelligent life out there? Not that I'm aware of. And I certainly don't think that such a connection could exist without my knowledge, awareness, and understanding of it. I don't know how you can have a connection. That's like saying you've got a God, but he never communicates with you, but he's definitely looking out for you, even though you can't demonstrate that he's looking out for you. It's like saying not just that you have a boyfriend or girlfriend who goes to another school, but that you've also never actually talked to and that doesn't interact with you in any detectable way.
Right.
I need
does
a way
this
to
imply that
distinguish between delusions?
Does this imply that ants or you know that other creatures on and Lulu might say yes, but like we're more intelligent than you know, slugs, chimps. Does that mean that there is a connection between like a literal physical connection, or is it just similarity and common ancestry? Like, you know, this whole notion
that's
of
what they mean.
Yeah,
I don't get that that's what they mean. Your intelligence. What they mean is they think there's some thing, whether they think it's an agent or a being is nebulous, that is the incredibly powerful and personable, even if it's impersonal. I don't know how you resolve that. Thing that serves as the fabric or governance or connecting material in the universe, except that I don't think I have a connection to Jupiter in any substantive way.
No.
And we know, and by the way, heart math also dips into astrology as well. We know astrology is nonsense. Where the stars and everything else were in relation to everything else is, well, that's always changing, but where they were the moment you were born is not going to be any sort of significant contributing factor to any fact about your life. And the proof is, I can disprove astrology with one word, which I've done 100 times, which is twins, because twins have the same birth information, but not the same lives. But there are people who are like, well, twins are technically born, you know, slightly apart or whatever. So if no astrologer is going to try and map your birthday down to the second and say that 1 second either way, or 10 seconds either way, or 10 minutes either way is some sort of significance that they can demonstrate. They might make the claim, but here's the thing. We know for a fact that there are enough human beings, and we can branch out beyond human beings here in just a second. There are enough human beings giving birth that it has absolutely been the case that two individuals from different mothers have been born at the same second, like emerged at the same second. We know this happens. There's just too many people giving birth. But why is it we only do astrological charts for humans? Why aren't we doing astrological charts for rats and snakes and puppies? I mean, I hatched out 3 sets of twin snakes in the last year. And there's nothing that's more fun than cutting the egg open and seeing two little heads in there, even though you know it's unlikely either of them are going to make it, or at most one of them's going to. Every now we have a pair in the other room. Both of them are survived and are thriving and they're growing. I'm excited. But go ahead, run an astrological chart for my snakes. That set of twins in there. And do you run it from the day that I cut the egg, or the day that they pipped the egg, or the day that they would have come out of the egg? Because after you cut the egg, they stay in the egg to continue absorbing the nutrients in there for a day or two, whether they pip it on their own or you cut it. And then, is that their hatch date? Is that when they are born? It is bizarre to think that, ooh, let's figure out when and where you were born and do some star calculations. And I can tell you, trust me, today is a bad day to buy a lottery ticket. Yeah, every day is a bad fucking day to buy a lottery ticket. The odds are never in your favor.
Something the math ain't mathing, the science ain't sciencing.
All right. This one might be similarly problematic. Maureen is calling from Canada, pronouns are she, her, wants to know if we've heard of oh, this is typed wrong. I think it's Jeremy Griffith and the Human Experience or Condition.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Hello. Hello.
Hey,
Hi.
Maureen.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm recently an atheist, and thanks to the line for helping me get here. You guys have opened my mind up to a lot of different subjects, and a couple of them are scientific and like evolution. And I recently came across this interview somebody gave with this Jeremy Griffith, and I think in the back of my mind I kind of knew there was something weird about it, but because it said something about the biological cure for the human condition, and I thought, am I looking for a scientific reason for a for a god or something? I started listening to this thing, and I became, after the first few minutes of the interview, I realized this is nothing more than a religious thing, and he's trying to bring evolution of humans into this. And I don't know. I guess I was wondering if you had heard of this guy and what you think of people who try to bring science together with religion.
I don't know a great deal about him and the world transformation movement, other than
Oh, is that what it is?
yes. So it's, if you go to humancondition.com, it's the world transformation movement. It reads to me on first blush very new age self-help cult like. And
Yeah.
when I hear somebody say they've found the cure for the human condition, my first thing is, what do you mean by human condition and why does it need a cure? Because to me, the cure for the human condition is extinction.
Yep.
I don't know if he's advocating for the voluntary human extinction movement or not, but I'm generally opposed to that. Right now, I'd like to continue living, and I'd like most humans to continue living. That's about as nice as I can be about it. But I don't know enough, and it would be unfair for me, because it could be that this is dressed up in the trappings of self-help guru-esque type things. But yeah, I should probably stop there until I look into it more.
Maureen,
Yeah.
do you think that the human condition is that there is an ideal human condition?
I think I thought it was like how to be a better human is maybe what I was thinking they were going to talk about.
Okay, but forget this guy and forget everything.
Okay.
Just,
Yeah.
do you think that there is a human condition that is the ultimate pinnacle human condition, a single way that we could be that is best in all respects?
No, I don't really think so. I think you can be as intelligent, more intelligent than anybody, but you could also be, a horrible person. So
Right.
I don't.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, in general, you know, so Christians tend to go from we were perfect at one point, and now we're just getting worse. Every minute that goes by, and we're just hopefully holding on by our fingernails until Jesus comes and saves us. New Age stuff often tends to be the reverse, right? Well, we started off bad, but there is this goal that we can all work towards, and that someone intended, and that's the weird part to me, right? Like, and I'm just wondering if you understand the problem, even with any kind of thinking, where it's saying there is an ought here, there is an that we're working towards, as opposed to saying, well, let's all agree to what a better version of something is. Like, does that make sense? Does it make sense to you, Maureen? Any system of thinking that says that there is an ultimate ought, and that's going to be restored?
Yeah, I don't believe you can reach like perfection. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I think I kind of was looking at this as maybe it was going to be some sort of a self-help thing, and he started bringing in like scientific, evolution and stuff, and I couldn't listen to it very long before I realized that this was just a bunch of bull.
Well, I'm glad you were able to make that.
Yeah,
that
it wasn't helping me.
determination.
I was just wondering why it was. I kind of clicked on it because I think in the back of my mind I kind of knew what I was going to end up getting into, but I just had to click on that just to see if there was something there that I could.
Well, I can't blame you for that.
use.
I know that the key to weight loss is, intake versus output, the calories burned versus calories I bring in. But I'm still, every time I see a thing that's hey, maybe there's a shortcut over there, I get the instinct to want a shortcut to certain goals is understandable. I'm not gonna throw you under the bus for being curious. I'm just glad that you were able to quickly identify that it wasn't the thing. Matt and I don't tend to look at a lot of, or I shouldn't speak for Matt, but I don't tend to, look at a lot of the gurus and the self-help type things. I feel like we all tend to know what our goals are and what the steps would be. We're just not real good at doing those steps. But anyway.
Yeah.
Anything else, Maureen?
Yeah, there's one other thing. I'm finding that the one thing that learning not to live with, I used to rely on prayer for a lot of stuff, it never really got me anywhere, but that was one thing that I had. And I think now I'm trying to, I guess you try to seek some information somewhere else or something that could help you out instead of relying on, some magical thing.
But
I found that a little hard.
Yeah, I know. Just literally this month, there's been a few occasions where I've lamented. It's like, I used to be able to go pray for this, and I'm sad that isn't an option available for me now. So I get that. But I think your instinct is correct. That taking a moment to collect your thoughts and to pragmatically come up with a plan is going to be the over the long run is going to be the better success. And if you come up with if anyone out there has the great substitution for the temporary placebo of prayer, thinking that I've handed this problem off to somebody else, I would love to hear it. But understanding that it is a placebo is the first step.
Maureen, can you?
Yeah.
Are you actually where you can see the show?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I'm going to leave you on the line, but for fun, I'm going to see if they can make me full screen, and if so, I will then pull up the website and show you how I think about this and what I think about it. So, Morgan, can we full screen me? Yep, there we go. Now, this is the website. The World Transformation Movement, Human Condition. There are a ton of things about this website that read as completely boilerplate, pseudoscience, self-help claptrap that is trying to sell you something. And one of the most important things is that they're not trying to sell you anything on the front page. So the breakthrough biological explanation of the human condition. What is the human condition? What is it that we're trying to explain? And by the way, that doesn't mean this is a solution for anything or that there's even a problem. It's just an explanation. This page doesn't have verisimilitude, the appearance of being true. Instead, it appears to be the pseudoscience self-help stuff. And so what you got is a video right up here. And this is also all formatted so that when you scroll through it on the phone, it's kind of similar. Then you have testimonials. Please help this critical new science. That is a label that should make everybody go, woo, 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 woo. This is bullshit. Because you don't get new science. There's just science. There would be new disciplines within science that would then be published in journals and scientists would be talking about. So please help this critical new science by sharing the above video and making an appreciative comment about it. All that is a request to drive up the algorithm. Don't miss the excitement with the real problem of the human condition finally solved. We can now actually fix the world. If I had a good case for what the real problem of the human condition was and that it could fix the world, I would not put up a website like this to do it. It would be front page news. If it was proper scientific discovery about the human condition and how to fix it, it would be presented to journals. It would be backed up by scientific inquiry. There would be multiple scientists basically saying, yep, Matt cracked it. So then there's the About the World Transformation Movement and biologist Jeremy Griffith. Well, it's interesting that he's a biologist because I'm not convinced that biology is in any way a problem within the human condition, but we don't need a new science of biology. But it said the World Transformation Movement is a global not-for-profit charity that promotes Australian biologist Jeremy Griffith's breakthrough resolution of the underlying problem in all human affairs of the human condition. All human affairs of the human condition is a fucking panacea. And much like infinite power, I don't think that's something that's like that, but thereby ending human conflict and suffering. You can't end human conflict and suffering as long as there are physical facts that cause suffering. Has he got a cure for cancer? People suffer from cancer. Has he got a cure for starvation? There may be things that we can do to change the world so that people are less likely to starve, but there are always going to be people who are, well, suffering. Not, we can reduce it, but to say ending human conflict and suffering at its source. Well, I have lots of suffering. I'm not in a bad way, but there's lots of areas I suffer. I had a triple bypass. I have diabetes. I have neuropathy. I doubt that there's a biologist studying the human condition that has cracked the suffering associated with my neuropathy and yet somehow has managed to fail to tell any of the doctors that I go visit. Then they go to elaborate Charles Darwin's concept of natural selection, explained the origin of the great variety of life on Earth, but their biology has been stalled. Unable to take the next step and explain the origin of human nature, and particularly explain our good and evil, conflicted human condition. But humanity is stalled no longer because biologist Jeremy Griffith has finally solved this age-old riddle of riddles of the human condition. And most wonderfully, his answer, which is available for free here on this website, defends and dignifies humans in the most remarkable way. Why are you giving me all this preamble? Why doesn't the website start with, here is the solution to the riddle of riddles of the human condition? Eat your veggies, walk around, move around more, eat less, be kind to people, rewind. Whatever it is, why is it then watch the interview above, then scroll down to see interviews and the key books and freedom essays and commendations and the transformation and how to help and frequently asked questions and world transformation movement community. And then you get your WTM products, fix the world's, human condition. Let's advertise these things. Of course, we're going to give you free t-shirts. Your t-shirts are sending people to our website where we can sell them stuff. But wait a minute, I hear them saying, we're not selling it. If you keep scrolling, Matt, all this stuff is free. Here's the intro and main videos. Here's the key books. Get your copy completely free. No registration required. Online, PDF, print, ebook, audio, buy, watch, boom, boom, boom. Is that true? Here, let's, oh wait, when I tried to click, it wouldn't let me. Get your copy of the interview, read online, boom, 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 boom. That was supposed to be the ideal summary of freedom. How about this one? The complete book. Buy a copy or print a free copy. Cool. So no purchase necessary. What percentage of people are going to print out a copy of the book versus buying it? Like buying a physical copy. So then you keep going. Then there's essays, and you can just subscribe to their list. You can see all 64 freedom essays. And then down here is a selection of commendations. Professor Stephen Hawking is most interested in your impressive proposal. So that's not Hawking saying there's something here. This is somebody else saying Professor Hawking is interested in your impressive proposal. So they didn't get a quote from Hawking, but they're going to use his name to say he was interested in this. You know what? I'm most interested in it. I bet you that my name's not going to appear on there because I'm not Stephen Hawking. But also, if you sent them a letter and said, Neil deGrasse Tyson's really interested in your thing, I bet they would post that as a quote. Then there's a list of others and everything, but Hawking is the first one. Here's a quote. I've no doubt a fascinating television series could be made based upon this. Sir David Attenborough. Sorry, but fascinating is what Spock says when something is off. Fascinating. So the fact that you could make a TV show about this that's fascinating is what David Attenborough said about this. Notice not one of these respected luminaries are saying this guy has in fact cracked where biology left off. He has in fact cracked all this and gone by. And by the way, here's thought leaders. Let's see if we recognize any other names. There's Professor Anthony Barnett, Harry Prosen, Stuart Holbert, Karen Riley, Sir David Attenborough, who somehow managed to rank like 7th or 8th down here. Anybody else we recognize? Or Professor Stephen Oppenheimer said, very impressive, particularly like the primatology section. Not, this is the key to the human condition. You don't even know this quote from Stephen Oppenheimer. It might have been about a single book or paper within this that isn't the solution. Everything about this. Oh, here's video endorsements. And then our transformation page presents the answer to the all-important question of how understanding the human condition is able to save the human race. This is not how you fix the world. This is how you build a cult. And this is how you make money, by pretending that you're not making money. I don't know for sure. I'd be willing to bet. Well, actually, we do know. Their YouTube channels definitely monetized because now all of them are. But whether or not they're actually making money off it is another issue. But that basically my take there. And you can put Paul back up now. I'm done being full screen. My take on this is, without going further, this has the feel of being a new age guru, self-help, cult-like pseudoscience nonsense. But I could be wrong. And I'm happy to consider it if somebody can explain, why did the person who has cracked the key to solving human suffering posted it on a website that looks exactly like one of those websites of, here's the new way to regrow hair.
Marketing.
Yep.
Yeah, now I feel even a little more foolish.
That's all right. I mean, you know, one of the things is, and like the last caller was talking about being open-minded, and there's the old joke, you know, don't be so open-minded that your brain falls out, or you're so open-minded I can hear the wind whistling. Open-mindedness, it has been abused as much as the term skepticism. People think skepticism is cynicism. It's not. It's not just going, oh, that's claptrap. It is saying this has been demonstrated to be true, or this has not been demonstrated to be true, or this has failed testing. That's it. And but being open-minded, it's like, oh, you need to be open-minded. It's a good thing. Yes, we need to be open to things not being the way we thought they were. We need to be open to new evidence and exploration. But I'm not open-minded to the notion that astrology is a way of detecting the stars influencing my life. To whatever extent it is testable, it is obviously false. To the extent that it might be true, it is insignificant or untestable. And so therefore I don't need to spend any more time on it. This is like what the James Randi Educational Foundation did. It's, oh, we can test dowsers and they keep failing. How many times do we have to test dowsers and have them fail before we stop testing dowsers? And if you're open-minded, you don't ever get to stop, because in each instance, all you did was demonstrate that on this day, in this situation, this person could not demonstrate the effect that they claimed. That doesn't mean that he can't or they can't some other day. It doesn't mean that somebody else can't do it in some other way or some other day. But you don't keep testing it until somebody presents something novel, like here's what's different about my version that hasn't been tested, or until they have demonstrated reliably some sort of result elsewhere. Otherwise, you're going to get every delusional person out there who thinks they've, got the secret to infinite energy and everything else, and you're going to spend all your time testing them. And all of that time that we spent testing things for which there's no demonstration of possibility or likelihood could have been spent doing research on things to actually help humans, like curing disease.
Yep. Yeah.
That's all I got, Maureen. I appreciate the call, and I'll probably look into it more, because those types of things amuse me sometimes, but also frustrate me.
Yeah, I was wondering, Matt, if I could ask one more question. I find myself, I'm a very emotional thinker, and I'm trying to use logic more, and I'm wondering if there's a book or something you can recommend that I could read to help me be more logical than, just emotional.
Well, I'd love to tell you that you could take vaccines and contract autism, and that would make you more logical. But we know that all of that is wrong at every conceivable level, no matter what RFK Jr. thinks. Yeah, there's. I would say there's a number of skeptical resources out there, but a lot of it is just look into, like Paul was saying earlier, look into epistemology and look into what other skeptics have written, not about specific subjects, but about the process of thinking. Even somebody like Dan Dennett, as a philosopher, he had a book on intuition pumps and little things that you can use to try to get yourself thinking correctly and asking the right questions. But I tend to, quite most of the time, distill something down to as specific a claim as I can, and then change the words, the nouns in that claim, to something that I know about or understand, basically turning it into a statement that is analogous about something else I understand. That will sometimes clarify where the problem is, if it's an obvious problem. And it's this, when we say, oh, if it's raining, I must be wet, and therefore if I'm wet, it must be raining. How do we know that those two things aren't the same? Because I could be wet when I'm swimming or when I'm in the shower. It has nothing to do with whether it's raining. Rain is just one path towards it. When you substitute the words in the claim so that there's something more familiar, something you know more about, I don't know. I know a lot about snakes. If I can substitute stuff in about snakes, it makes it more clear for me. That's a good start. I also have a video on my channel that's about which books you should be reading things like Innumeracy by John Allen Paulos, and other kind of helpful books on logical thinking. But really, it is practice and diligence, and it almost feels like I am obsessed in that area, and so I just have to keep studying those things. And I don't know how to tell somebody who thinks differently, keep thinking differently. Just keep trying to learn the new stuff too.
Okay.
4:30.
All right.
I'll throw in one recommendation. It's Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman is a good one.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it. And have
Thanks,
a good
Maureen.
day. Okay.
Thanks.
Too. We've got about 15 minutes left or so. Thank you, Morgan. And there's 2 calls on hold. I want to take this one right now. DTM's calling from California. Pronouns are he, him. Is an agnostic who's asking, "Am I still a Christian?" Wow. Hey DTM, how you doing?
Hey, Matt. Hey, Paul. How's it going today?
Going all right.
Not bad. What when you say, "Am I still a Christian?" I'm assuming you used to be.
Yeah, so I recently, probably within the last few years, started identifying as atheist for reasons that I couldn't really identify until having some other experiences in life that allowed me to look back at my own upbringing and how exactly I kind of got to this place. But I find that I modeled myself after Jesus when I was a child with the whole "What Would Jesus Do" movement. And that really did, I'm 40 years old now, that really has carried on throughout my life. But the more I dived into science, the more I found that, like, a lot of the things, a lot of the questions that I had about God, I feel were kind of answered. And then the more I started to look into the Bible, the less Christian, I wouldn't even say Christian, the less I believed in God is the best way I could say it. Excuse me if I can't really articulate all of it that well. I don't understand all of it myself that well. But it seems like there's a lot of things in the Bible that aren't practiced or talked about amongst Christians. And I guess the short of it is that I've kind of come to the understanding that I see modern Christianity as open and overt anti-Christian behavior. And an easy way to kind of, get that out of people is to, tell them you're atheist, and you can find out if you're talking to a Christian or an antichrist. And then on top of that, when I look at channels like Brian Greene's World Science Festival, like every time I find myself firmly out of that belief, even in Jesus, I find Brian Greene saying something like, with string theory, what the actual theory of string theory is that, there are these tiny filaments of string that are vibrating at the smallest level, and that light and matter are just different forms of the same thing. I find myself kind of believing in the creationist portion of "let there be light," but when I hear a Christian speak or a theist speak, they sound like complete antichrist. I guess a good example would be
DTM, from the Christian perspective, from a Christian perspectives, isn't God the only one that knows if somebody's a Christian or not?
I don't know anymore, to be completely honest. Like, I guess that would be, personally, I don't really believe God exists anymore. And I know that sounds crazy. Jesus Christ, I don't believe he was talking about.
God exists either. I mean, I don't think it has anything to do with whether or not we're crazy. We don't believe that God exists. But you're saying you look at modern Christians and you see something that's anti-Christian, but that's you acting as if you have an understanding of Christian that is the correct one. How do you know your understanding of Christianity that denounces others is the correct one?
mainly because of the fact that I guess a good example is when you ask people what Jesus was against, and you'll hear things like he wanted, a traditional family and, all these laws, and he did say that in the Bible. Part of that's, why I called when you were on, Matt, because I know you do know more about the Bible than some of the other hosts. But like the truthful answer is I guess the Jeffersonian Jesus. If you take away all the magic, all of the resurrection, if you take away all the magic from Jesus, he becomes a more powerful figure than he is with all the miracles, in my mind.
I have no
He was
idea what that means or how it's remotely an answer to my question, but I was basically saying, what criteria are you using to show that your definition of Christianity is the true one? And you seem to say that you went to the Bible, but the Bible would also say that there are many of you here who are not saved, and that God is the only one that knows who is or isn't truly saved. So it seems like when you say that modern Christian stuff, when you ask them, hey, what would Jesus want? And they get it wrong, you go to the Bible. And then when you want to determine who isn't or isn't a true Christian, you evidently at that point skip the Bible and skip God and inject your own perception.
that's not my intention. I may be doing that.
Okay. What does God say?
I try to base it off of.
If you don't believe there's a God, how can there be true Christian?
So I'm not sure if you've ever heard of the Gnostic. I'm pretty sure you've heard of the Gnostic text before.
Yes.
In that there's another being called Yaldabaoth, who basically is, when you read of Yaldabaoth, he's basically exactly what the Bible describes Yahweh as. In my own history, this has been hard for me to talk about. I hope I don't cause any problems.
I'm sorry. Something's going on with your phone, as if you're outside in the wind, and it's absolutely annoying and obnoxious.
Yeah.
But if there is no God,
Is it better now?
If there is no God, how can there be a true Christian? Doesn't true Christianity require that there be a God?
That's why I said am I still Christian, because I still believe in some of the things in the Bible, but I do believe that it's been altered.
I still believe in some of the things in the Bible too. That's irrelevant as to whether or not there's a God or whether or not I'm a Christian.
So the Christian part, I can answer that.
I'm opposed to murder. Does that mean I'm a Christian?
No.
Okay. So if you don't believe there's a God, how can there be a true Christian without a God? Where are you getting that concept?
So my idea of what a Christian is and what I was taught as a Christian Baptist is that a Christian is a person who has his own relationship with Christ.
How can you have a relationship with someone who doesn't exist?
Exactly. So it's like, okay, so there's really nothing to go off of that. But from the Bible, the things that Jesus was really in the most against and did the most heinous things against were money. And that's kind of where I start to identify that, most of the decisions that people make in modern society is solely on money and themselves and eternal life. And I feel like if you're after those things.
But you're just describing yourself, so that's great, but you could turn to J.R.R. Tolkien, who is, famously anti-capitalist, anti-industrialization, right? And you could say, well, I'm just a Tolkienist because I agree with a few things that he liked, or I'm a Buddhist because I agree with a few things. Like you realize you're just cafeteriaing this, which means that you are coming up with your own philosophy, and you're actually picking some things that Jesus said that you liked, ignoring things you didn't like, and actually also interpreting some of the things you do like in the way you like them when other people interpret them a different way. Like the golden rule, for example, do unto others as they do unto you. That didn't originate with Jesus, right? That's like there's
No,
recordings of
no,
versions
and
of
that's
that.
why I
Right. So why
that's why I
are
would
you
say that, like,
why are you trying to appropriate Christianity at this point? Like, it seems like you would love to use the label for the philosophy that you think, and I guess what's the advantage of that over saying, well, this is my philosophy. It's an anti-money, anti-capitalism philosophy, or what? I don't mean to say that you are, but whatever you seem to, money is the root of all evil type thing. Why not just embrace and define what you are instead of using this label that means 45,000 things to the world, right? Why
Yeah, I don't
hold
know
on
if
to
I
that label?
if I'm completely honest with you, I think it's fear. To be black and white, not sugar coated. It's fear, because when I see people who claim to be Christian in today's society, it kind of seems like if you don't have some sort of background in that faith, that you're either dead to them or they're willing to hurt you.
Well, what do you
Like,
think
it
they're going to
really is
do to
a
somebody?
cult.
What do you think they're going to do to somebody who doesn't believe in a God and who misrepresents what they think Jesus said?
Probably similar things, like, to be completely
Yeah.
honest.
So, are you familiar with the Sermon on the Mount?
I've heard of it before, but
You've heard of it. Maybe you should read it before you start making pronouncements about how Jesus primarily spoke against money, because this is the biggest passage in the entire Bible that is attributed to and would be red letter in a red letter edition of what Jesus actually said. And it's a couple of different chapters, but there's very little about money here. There's stuff about anger and lust and divorce and oaths and retaliation and loving your enemies and giving to the needy. Ooh, that includes money, but it's not a condemnation of money. It includes the Lord's Prayer, a passage on fasting. And it also says, hey, don't lay your treasures up on earth, but where moth and rust doth
okay, so
corrupt and where thieves break through. And so it keeps going and keeps going. And it seems to me like I would be willing to bet money you don't know what Jesus supposedly said and how much of it was about money, but you have, after getting rid of this, cherry picked out the portions that seem to be consistent with what you'd like to be true.
that's probably accurate.
Cool.
And that
Stop
only
doing
goes
that.
to the reality of evidence in the world with, and I'm not trying to say so my attachment to being Christian is an old identity of mine. It is a way to say it. It's very hard to just kind of shake the word, the idea, and the indoctrination of Christianity on myself.
Yes, and
If
that's
I
why we
really
are
don't,
raising money for an organization called Recovering from Religion. I would recommend that
oh
you
yeah,
go
I've
to
been watching that.
I would recommend that you go to recoveringfromreligion.org. Huge thank you to everybody who showed up for the entire weekend. We raised over $95,000. We raised so much money I had to shave off my beard, so I'm going to look like a dipshit for the next month with my porn stash. But that's the way it goes.
You look good,
But
Matt.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. You are making pronouncements about who is or isn't a true Christian, and then you back off when pressed. But I would say, as an atheist, I don't think anybody's a true Christian. But if I put my Southern Baptist hat back on, here, let me put my Jesus hat on. And now I'm pretending to be Matt as I was when I was a Southern Baptist. Only God knows whether or not you are truly saved. But from my standpoint, what I hear from you is nothing at all that I would describe as truly Christian. If in fact you are a sincere believer and you are saved, you are not, from my perspective, walking with Christ, listening to the Holy Spirit, or accurately reflecting the words of Scripture. Nor are you doing what you're supposed to do in 1 Peter 3:15 to be
Can,
ready at all times
can
to
I
give a
say,
reason for the faith. Why are you fucking? Never mind. I'm done.
I just wanted
No,
to say
say
real quick
goodbye.
that
Say
I do
goodbye,
have a reason
DTM.
for not
Say
reading the
goodbye.
Bible.
Say goodbye, DTM.
Goodbye.
Okay. From now on, I'm just going to put mute on when I'm trying to do a bit that builds up to a fucking point. And the point is, as a Southern Baptist, I would have called you at best a backslidden hypocrite. And now as an atheist, I would say you are not a Christian, but I don't think anybody's a Christian, but you clearly don't know how to sit quietly while someone is making a point.
Which is the first thing I learned at church was how to be quiet.
Yeah. Yeah. This is not the audience participation part. When I put on my Jesus hat to explain the very thing that you're calling to ask me, that there's a number of different criteria and categories that could, maybe you're a Christian, maybe you're not, maybe you are. I was trying to point out that you have a definition of Christianity, which you have invented out of whole cloth based on your preferences so that you can make pronouncements from your perspective as a non-believer who doesn't even think there's a God about who is or who isn't a Christian. And as an atheist, I have no way of knowing who is or isn't a true Christian. I'm convinced that if true Christian means I have a relationship with the risen Christ, I don't think anybody is. I think they are all washed up in the same delusion that I was. But I'm open to being shown that I'm wrong once they can actually make the case and provide evidence. But since you couldn't sit and wait for me just to finish a 1 minute bit, we're done. Hey, it's 4:45, Paul, and I told you we'd be done at 4:45, and we are now done at 4:45.
The on-time network.
I try and do what I can. By the way, for everybody who hasn't seen it, you can go back right here on this network, watch the live streams from yesterday. You can still donate for the next 20 days. You can help, if you haven't already, help Recovering from Religion get over $100,000 in donations. And we are actually excited that this is the third year that we have supported this great organization. Unlike a lot of other organizations, it's not, hey, let's have a convention to get together and do this, and we're going to, have a bunch of science lectures and other things. This is an organization that is genuinely focused on helping people, helping individuals. You can go to recoveringfromreligion.org, and there's a chat place there. You can also find the hotline number and call and actually speak to somebody if you find that you're struggling with questions about your beliefs and your faith. Am I still a Christian? Am I a closet Christian? Is Christianity still, haunting me in the back of my head? Is it a stumbling block to me finding out truth? All of these things are things that they're going to help you with, and they're not going to debate you. They're not trying to make you an atheist. They are genuinely just trying to help, because they are a group of people who recognize how many of us could have benefited from help and had to do it all on our own. There was no RFR when I was doing this work, which probably explains why I turned out the way I did. If you want,
and there was RFR. There was RFR for me, which maybe explains the anyway. Both things.
There you go.
Both things are true.
Before RFR, and then after RFR.
Yeah, I use them. So yeah, all good.
That's it for us. There's another episode of the Sunday Show After Dark coming up at 7:00 tonight, and don't forget to tune in to all the other shows on the network this week. Please continue to keep donating and supporting RFR, and just watch and share the content here. Let people know about what's going on the line so that we get more theistic callers and not more, am I a theist caller? Or, hey, here's some woo stuff maybe. Because I'd love for somebody to say, yeah, you've missed out. You have flawed epistemology, and there's a really good reason that you are not seeing the obvious God that these billions of people see. Because I love you, babe. Hey, what is love?
Baby, don't hurt me. No more.